Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Good morning.
Good morning. This is Donald Fryer, Deacon Donald Fryer of Suicide Incorporated.
Great. Thank you for coming this morning.
Good morning. How are you? Who am I speaking with?
Oh, this is Melissa. That we're on a Zoom, so there's about 30.
Okay. Melissa Clark.
Yep, that's me.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Morning, everyone. It's so great to see so many familiar faces this morning. Hopefully the roads won't be too bad wherever you're located this morning. Great to see you all. Lots of great familiar faces. So thank you all so much. Just going to give everyone, the customary few minutes to jump on Zoom, but we're already getting lots of folks in, so that's fantastic. And if folks want to start going ahead and putting their name, email, information in the chat box, we will save that. That would be great.
I'm Melissa.
Yep.
Melissa?
Yes.
This is Donald Fryer. I'm on the conference line.
That's okay. Yeah, that's fine. No worries.
Okay?
Yep, totally.
Okay.
Hi, Erin. Hi, Olga. Hi, Joanne. Great to see everyone. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Loretta. Hi, Paul. Lots of familiar faces this morning. Hi, Jackie. Great. This is fantastic. Wonderful. Great to see you all. Hi, Michelle. Hi, George. Great, folks. So not even 9 o'clock and there's already 50 of us. So we're just going to give it a couple more minutes before we kick things off. We have some phenomenal speakers this morning. So we're absolutely thrilled to bring you today's presentations. And if folks that are just joining can go ahead and introduce themselves in the chat box, that would be awesome. And if United Way team can as well, that would be great too. And we will be saving the chat box. Hi, Jamie. Long time no see. Hi, Loretta. Hi, Isabella. Hi, Lindsay. Great. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully the roads are safe wherever you are, and hopefully you're nice and warm and cozy with our winter weather coming. Hi, Callie. Hi, Carl. Hi, Gerald. Great. Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you all. Oh, already snowing in Sullivan County. Great. Good morning, Dennis. Great to see you all this morning. Wonderful to see you all. We're just giving it a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Give everyone that customary moment to grab their coffee and jump on. Or tea in Jeannie's case. And Kendra's, right? I think you're a tea drinker.
I got it. It's ready. It's nice and the right temperature to drink.
Perfect. And I'll give you all a hint. We are going to do our mug contest. I know you love them and look forward to them. So make sure you have your favorite mug in mind for when we do that. You could win a $5 gift card. Who knows? And it is 9:01 and we already have over 80 people. So we're just gonna give it a couple more minutes. This is a fantastic turnout. So we're just thrilled. And if my folks that are co-hosts can just continue to let people in the room, that would be wonderful. For folks that are just joining, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. We will see that, so you all have everyone's contact information. Some great virtual networking this morning. Hi, Jackie. Great to see so many familiar faces this morning. Hi, Caitlin. Wonderful. Hi, Mary Kay. Great. Wonderful. So we're going to give it 2 more minutes and then we'll kick things off. We are getting close to 100 already, so it's just wonderful. Hi, Sumber. Hi, Lewis. Great. Happy New Year to those I haven't seen. And I just hope everything's been going well and hopefully winter won't drag on too much longer. I know we're just starting to see some snow. I know some folks love it, but I don't. It's pretty to look at, but I don't like to drive in it. So, hi, Liz. Great. We're just going to give it 1 more minute and then I'm going to kick things off. Hi, Gary. Long time no see. Hi, Michaela. So wonderful to see folks. And if you haven't introduced yourselves in the chat box, please go ahead and do so. It's great to see so many folks with their cameras on this morning around our virtual roundtable. Hi, Sheba. Hi, Robin. It's always great having these events and seeing, my 100 friends in a room together. So. All right, I'm gonna do a quick introduction to Jeannie, our president and CEO, who of course needs no introduction, but good morning and welcome everyone. And thank you so much for coming. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Jeannie. And thank you all so much for coming. I will go over housekeeping in just a moment and just a quick reminder to introduce yourselves if you haven't. All right, Jeannie, over to you.
Thank you, Melissa. And it is so wonderful to see all of you, even though it's virtual. Although it might be easier for some people, especially with the weather today, that you're able to attend. So it is great to see everyone. And I just want to thank you for all that you do each day to impact and support our families and our community. It really is so wonderful to see so many familiar faces. So we have an excellent agenda today with expert presenters. First, you're going to hear from Cammie Jones, who many of you may know from her tenure in nonprofits or her academy institutions at Dutchess County. And she will present around community engagement and beyond. And next, we will hear from Jessica Shear. And she is an all-star fundraiser who will speak on the North Stars for fundraising in 2023. And I know we can all certainly use some tips on fundraising. I know I can. And then lastly, Melissa Clark will present our current fundraising priorities for interested applicants. So yes, it is granting time. So please introduce yourselves in the chat box. And if you have questions, put them in the chat box throughout the day, because we definitely want to hear from you. And we do hope you learn a lot today. I just need to thank New York State Office of Mental Health, and Dutchess County Workforce Investment Board for their generous support. I mean, they really help us and support us so that we can put on these presentations. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my incredible team led by Melissa Clark for putting together today's workshop. So thank you for the amazing work that you do every day for our families and our communities. And with that, I will turn it back to Melissa.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. Before we begin, just a quick reminder to be engaged in today's workshop and ask lots of questions, and please do stay on mute. Also, please make sure to fill out your surveys at the end so that we can continue to secure sponsors for these amazing workshops. I know I'm looking forward to learning from our tremendous speakers this morning. And before we jump into Cammie's amazing presentation, I would like to also introduce Kendra Anderson and Isabella Houlihan, who are new to the team, and we'll just each speak for a moment about the NOAA program. So you're about to learn what that is. So Kendra, would you like to go first?
Of course. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kendra Anderson, and I am the NOAA coordinator for Dutchess County. NOAA actually stands for Nutrition Outreach and Education Program. And basically what we do is go into the community and try to find those that potentially qualify for the SNAP benefit. If we find that they do potentially qualify, then we go ahead and we can enroll them. Once they get this, the benefits, we can also help them with recertification. And then if necessary, we can advocate on behalf of the clients through the DSS process, because sometimes I know it can be a little difficult to get through. So we try and take some of that, the weight off of them by contacting someone in the Department of Social Services to get them, to get their benefits and to make sure that everything is okay. So I'm really so thankful that Melissa invited me to be a part of this team and to help the people in Dutchess County. And now I'm going to pass it on to my counterpart, Isabella.
Yes, thank you, Kendra. So yes, Kendra covers clients that are based out of Dutchess County, and then I take over the clients that are based out of Orange County, because, you know, it's a very wide area and there's a lot of people that are in need. But Kendra did a great job of explaining what we do. We can also, you know, help clients submit their documentation, you know, actually file their application, you know, for them. And then, you know, in terms of, you know, collaborations with other organizations and things like that, you know, if you're ever open to allowing us to come by and drop off some flyers there, or ever have any kind of event that you think you would see fit that we could like table at, or like give a presentation to your clients about what we do, if you feel, you know, you serve an audience that, you know, fits this description and could be potentially eligible, you know, I'll drop my information again in the chat box, but please don't be shy to let us know. We only started in October, so we are still, you know, looking for those individuals, households, and families to get signed up to make sure everyone that qualifies for benefits, you know, gets what they should be. So thank you very much, Kendra and Melissa.
Thank you so much, Kendra and Isabella. That was a great share, and we had a lot of engagement in the chat box. Folks already know about the amazing work you're doing, so that's fantastic. Now, thank you both, and without further ado, it is my great honor to introduce Cammie Jones, a longtime colleague and friend of United Way. Cammie is originally from Dallas, Texas. She has consistently created pathways towards social justice and civic engagement in the worlds of higher education for over 16 years. She's a first-generation college student and holds a BS in kinesiology from the University of Texas at Austin and a master's in higher education administration from Louisiana State University. Cammie Jones is the Director of Strategic Initiatives for Partners for Campus and Community Engagement, where she oversees several dynamic initiatives and programs that enhance the civic capacity of nonprofit and higher education institutions in Pennsylvania and New York. Additionally, she is the CEO and founder of J. Jones Consulting, LLC, where she works alongside nonprofits and higher education institutions on civic engagement initiatives. She also serves as the Bard Center for Civic Engagement and Open Society University Network Senior Fellow. Cami serves as an assistant and associate dean of experiential learning and civic engagement during her tenure at Bard, where she oversaw experiential learning and campus community partnerships, as well as assisted on the Carnegie classification team, which received classification in 2020. Furthermore, she has served in high-level executive roles at Dutchess Community College and Marist College. So welcome, Cami.
I always get a little anxious when someone does an introduction, but thank you so much, Melissa and Jeannie and everyone here. Even though it's a virtual space, I feel back at home. Dutchess County, as I tell people so many times, is the place where I grew up as an adult. I came here, to Dutchess right after grad school. And this community in Dutchess and Orange really welcomed me and allowed me to gain all these different skills that I've been able to implement in so many different ways. So I'm very grateful and honored to be here. This is very full circle for me. And if someone would have told me 12 years back that I would be back in this place doing this work, I wouldn't believe it, but I'm so happy to be here. In regards to why I'm here today, I really want to talk about the importance of civic engagement and really facilitate a conversation, but also learn from you about the impacts of the pandemic with the work that we do, but then also the best practices we've gained and how do we continue to implement equitable practices around our work. We do this in so many different ways in Dutchess and Orange. And so I'm really happy to see so many different organizations that are here today and really looking forward to guiding you more than anything, but also learning from you as well. So I am actually going to do, as I would always say, the scariest part of any presentation, and that is sharing my screen. And I think once I can get over that, we'll be good. So here's my screen. Front page, you've already seen that, you know who I am. And funny enough, in that picture, that is when I got the Athena Award through the Chamber of Commerce. And you can see the Dutchess County and bridge behind there. So I really love Dutchess County so much. So in regards to the overview on this slide, you'll see what our focus is going to be on today, which will include a review of what happened during the pandemic and how it impacted our communities. We're going to delve into how we responded within our communities, especially through civic and community engagement, as well as equity, and how all of this is interconnected. Another piece that's really important that we're going to focus on are community impacts, but also examples and models for you to think about in regards to equitable practices and models, and then talking, if we have time, break you up into different groups so that you can actually connect and talk with each other and really explore some of the best practices that you've learned. So some action planning, and then we'll have some final thoughts and some things that I'll leave with you today. This is going to be an interactive and inclusive, and I would say engaging conversation. I have attended these before. I actually worked at Grace Smith House earlier in my days when I first came to New York. So I remember being a recipient of United Way through the prevention program I was a part of, and I know it's a long day. So I'm going to try to make sure that we have some moments to pause and talk and gather with each other. But more than anything, if you have any questions, I would say use the chat. We're going to try to get to them at the end because there's just so much that we want to talk to today. And with that being said, I want us to begin. And on the next slide is an example of this. When you hear someone say COVID-19 or pandemic, what do you think? What comes to mind and how do you feel? And I want to acknowledge that when we're talking about this, it definitely brings forth a lot of different emotions. We have experienced so many different things. And you can definitely use the chat in regards to some of your thoughts around when you see this. Sorry, you see my screen and me live looking at the chat. But when you hear this, you see this, what comes to mind? Sad and tired, yes. Indeed. Tragedy. Fear, increased digital divide and education gap. Isolation, disconnected, unemployment loss, fear, anxiety, isolation, restrictions, stress, change. It's a blur, yes. I've been teaching a class on women in a pandemic for quite some time now when the pandemic started. And one of the assignments that I had to do with my students was a timeline from 2020 to now. And I was very shocked at how certain time periods of the pandemic were a blur. And that's connected with the trauma and experience, the new norm, troubling, isolation. So there's a lot of different themes that we actually are going to be talking about today based on research about some of the common trends in regards to what we saw: isolation, humbling, normalness, precautions. So a lot of different themes here. There's isolations, there's loss, confusion, the fear, and the fact that even if we're transitioning to a different phase of this, we still feel this. Precautions, normalness, all of this is a part of what we've seen. And going to the next slide, what I wanted to show you, as we know, the pandemic led to a public health and economic crisis in the world. And you said that pretty much in the chat. The pandemic disrupted lives. It pushed the hospitals and educational systems and nonprofit systems to its capacity, and it created a global economic slowdown. It changed communities, both for the good and the bad, and it made us ask difficult questions of how we move through society during this period and as we transition post. A recent Brookings report, which you're seeing right now, showed the top 10 facts about COVID-19 or 11 in the US economy. Breaking down these common themes, I really wanted to give you some guidance on what they saw. And so some of the things you mentioned in the chat, and as this top 10 shows, we saw small business shutdowns, Chapter 11 bankruptcies, employee layoffs. We definitely saw the impact of a decreased labor force and how low-income families, especially those with children, had an income shock. One of the things you'll see later in our conversation is the impact towards women and people and communities of color. At one point during the pandemic, in 26 states, more than 1 in 5 households were behind on rent, and that still is the case in many communities and areas in our country. The rate of food insecurity, as many of you listed in the chat, it doubled and almost tripled in some communities for households. There's also this mental health piece that happened, as a lot of you talked about, that isolation piece. And then there was the burden of care. And when I mentioned the burden of care, not just the caretaker's role, say for a family or children, but also loved ones, your community members, your coworkers. There was a lot of different aspects of care that we felt we had to take on during this time. And then the last piece is the lack of access to education and educational resources. One thing I remember, because I wasn't upstate during this time, was definitely Wi-Fi access, access to places that had that so that you could work or you could go to school. And I share these themes because when you see this, you can't help but wonder, so what does this all mean? And who are impacted the most? This gives you kind of a glimpse to it. But if we delve a little bit more into this work, we also know who stepped up to help those in need during the pandemic. And the community's response was key, more than anything. So first, what we're going to do is we have to acknowledge the inequities that happened. This crisis disproportionately impacted communities who are structurally marginalized, and that's beyond problematic. In April 2021, you're seeing some figures from this. A Washington Post study found that majority Black counties face 3 times the COVID-19 infection rate and nearly 6 times the mortality rate from the virus than majority white counties did in our country. And furthermore, the CDC also released its first breakdown of the COVID-19 case data around 2021, and it showed that 30% of patients whose race were known in the pandemic were Black. This made up 14% of the population. And this was happening because of a lot of different things. There were pre-existing health conditions such as obesity, diabetes, and asthma, which made people of color in particular communities more susceptible to the virus. But then there was also the lack of access to proper healthcare, jobs, housing, bare necessities in our society. And that's still an issue whether there's a pandemic or not. And the CDC revealed also how these communities are more likely to be uninsured and often reported that medical professionals took their ailments less seriously during the pandemic. But we also know if you look at the stats around the healthcare systems, this is something that's coming outside of a pandemic. So what we have here is this healthcare piece, but then we had the frontline workers. So I'm kind of bringing you back to 2020 and all the different things that happen because things can be a blur. So we had frontline workers who were considered essential by title, right? But they were invisible in a lot of ways in our society. And these frontline workers were dominated by some of the groups that I mentioned before, these marginalized groups such as women and people of color. And women of color, more than anything, when we think about the different systems that were impacted during the pandemic, were overrepresented in hospitality, childcare, leisure, and retail industries, which experienced losses, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. That include restaurants and hotels and shops. These businesses felt the impact when Americans had to stay home, right? When we were practicing social distancing, all these different things that may be a blur. Going back to the Washington Post piece, one of the things that they highlighted was that women of color faced the starkest losses during the pandemic and even before. And if you think about that, that's a perfect storm. Women of color already in low paid jobs or people of color that risk for job loss. And now they've lost those jobs because of the pandemic. And now they're trying to reintegrate themselves within society. So when you throw in the pandemic and you see these different themes that I talked about in the previous slide, there's a decrease in the labor force, but it impacts the communities in which we are engaged in. So you have this interesting tension that's happening in the community around the virus and how it's affecting and exposing disparities that were known to different individuals within our communities already. And why is this? Well, we need to also talk about one more thing, and that's the pay gap. So when we think about the pay gap, Black women make 63 cents of the dollar and Latina women make 54 cents. And that's in comparison to white women who make 79 cents. And according to a report actually by the National Women's Law Center, women comprise of 2/3 of minimum wage earners in the US. And what's troubling about this statistic and how this is all connected is that more frequently, these women are minimum wage earners. They comprise these large numbers, they live in our communities, and that means that the households within our community have women of color that are greatly impacted the most and are living in poverty. This means more than anything that it's imperative to eliminate the wage gap, not just for women in general, but for women no matter their racial background, or we're going to continue to see a lot of the different cycles and themes that were mentioned in the pandemic and beyond. And that's very devastating for all of us. And this chart right here kind of summarizes a lot of different thoughts that were shared in the chat in regards to the pandemic. And I'm not sure. Oh, I think someone, that's not me speaking, just by the way. I think someone needs to be muted, but just going back to this chart, I'm not sure who remembers this, but in April and March of 2020, I don't know who remembers this, but I remember I kept hearing that so many people kept saying, this virus is going to be the great equalizer. We kept hearing that constantly. But more than anything, it revealed things that a lot of Americans knew or were personally experiencing themselves, and that's an unbalanced system of care, lack of support and access to basic human rights, which leads to this other defining theme in the pandemic. And of course, that's the economy. At one point, the United States shed more than 20.5 million jobs during 2020. And that's an unprecedented number, and that led to a high record unemployment rate of around 14.7% in comparison to 3.5 now, which fluctuates, of course, but you can see that gap. And in 2020, the Department of Labor revealed that while the unemployment rate for whites reached around 14% in the early parts of the pandemic, a historic high of 16.7% of African Americans were out of work. And amongst Latinos, it soared to 18.9%. And this is a very high record. And I share these different numbers because these stats reveal how inequitable systems impact communities in which we engage in and we serve in, and who are still gravely impacted. This is just a glimpse, this chart and the other charts prior to what has happened to individuals in marginalized communities. This is not uncommon, unfortunately, and it happens in disasters. Those with the least power, the biggest barriers, have a lack of access to resources and are hit first and the hardest. The last glimpse of where we can see examples of that is during the housing crisis around 2010, but also Hurricane Katrina. So going back to women, and I really want to bring this home, is that when we think about those unemployment rates, especially around women, which rose to 15.5%, but now it's around 3.1%, they also tend to hold a disproportionate number of jobs. And the reason why I'm bringing all this is because there's an intersectionality piece between gender, race, your positionality in society. There's this theme of disproportionate numbers, high employment rates, lack of support, lack of access to resources, and least likely to be in positions of power to shift the narrative. But yet they also are the foundation of saving lives and communities during this time, as I mentioned, with the frontline workers. And why is this happening? Well, we have to go back to the inequitable practices, which you're going to constantly hear, because these are long-standing structural barriers in society. And our communities, these forms of institutionalized discrimination and interconnected oppressions that we've seen have led to stark outcomes for marginalized communities. But then let's talk about the community. Now, of course, I'm not here to paint such a bleak picture, but I think it's important that we remember what happened and bring it back, because we know that has impacted the work that we do in our communities and our counties. We have to understand the reality of the situation and how these stats have impacted those who seek services from us and the work that we do and to stay afloat during times of uncertainty. And I'm sure you all have seen this in different ways. Many turn to the community for help and continue to do so. And I am more than proud of the efforts of the communities when many other systems during the pandemic were slow to respond and support. It was the community and nonprofits and different organizations and community leaders that stepped up on a grassroots level, despite the numbers and the stories that you may hear in the themes. So in a lot of ways, we organize in different ways. The power of community, it really uplifted those who were impacted the most by the pandemic, which is why I'm here to share this. We know what happened, how our communities were impacted, and yet we became innovative throughout the despair and the lack of hope and just extremely dark times, if we're being honest. We learned best practices in regards to equity and inclusion, and we're now at this interesting stage, if I'm being honest, this stage of transformation and transition, I would say. We've pivoted and we've found best practices that have worked in regards to supporting our communities, but now we're at this interesting space. So how do we continue to create inclusive communities? How do we take what we've learned during the pandemic that worked and continue on with those practices so that we are creating and cultivating spaces of belonging, reciprocity, but also filled with respect and support? This is where community and civic engagement and equity all come into place into this big picture and the impact of the pandemic. So now that we have a sense of the pandemic, and sorry I had to put you through that, and we had to bring back some things from the past because I know that can be very difficult. Now that we kind of have an idea of what happened and some of the themes, I want us to now discuss what community and engagement is in equity and how we can build off of supporting the community, as well as how do we work hand in hand to make sure we're creating holistic spaces of care and support for our communities as we transition to, I'm not really sure what to call it, an in-between era, a post-pandemic era, and depending on your geographic location for sure. And so before I go into this community piece and how community engagement can push us along, I obviously have an audience pause, and I want to ask you, when you hear the term community engagement, what does that mean to you? What comes to mind? How do you see it? So I'm going to give the audience about 15 seconds just to share your thoughts around what does community engagement mean to you? And there is no wrong answer to this, because depending on our positionality in society, it means different things to us. Inclusion, getting involved, listening, support, volunteers, partnering with an open and growth mindset, a joint effort, yes, interaction, creating space, agency, supporting each other, working together, no silos. I saw that, it went by really fast, but no silos, I'm all about that. Getting more people involved, authenticity, authentic. Okay, so we have a theme about authenticity and transparency, cultural responsive, vulnerability, making sure we have resources, working across historic. Oh yeah, someone knows what's happening in the future of this presentation. Working across those historic barriers is very key. Understanding to communicate to communities we serve, cultivating relationships. Oh, this is also wonderful. Thank you so much for participating. This is fantastic. Community engagement means addressing the immediate and long-term goals to create solutions for communities that continue to evolve. All right, so I'm done with my presentation. No, I'm kidding. I will transition actually to the next page. Wow, these are still coming in. Safe spaces, understanding needs. This is all wonderful. And you basically wrote the definition that we use in the Carnegie classification of community engagement. This is one form of the definition. I'm going to show you two. This first definition shows that community engagement describes a collaboration between institutions of higher education, but also not only higher education, nonprofits and their larger communities. This can be local, regional, state, national, global, for the mutual beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources. So thinking about our institutions, some of our anchor institutions in our communities are higher ed institutions, but also nonprofits. And in a lot of ways, they create this space for exchange of knowledge and resources. That's one way that community engagement can happen. Another way is actually a definition via Building the Field of 2014. And I really like this group because it was a bunch of community members in a setting that wrote this together. And they believe that community engagement is a process that includes multiple techniques to promote the participation of residents in community life, especially those who are excluded and isolated. Community engagement involves them in collective action. So that is one piece that I saw in the chat a lot, working together. So collective action work to create a healthy community. But for many people in communities, if we're being honest, the impacts of community engagement go far beyond whatever the specific outcome we're trying to reach or that action. Impacts can include healing, reclaiming a healthy identity, reconnecting with culture and spirituality, building relationships, and embracing individual and collective power. And I share that because a lot of that is going to be needed and acknowledged as our communities are starting to reintegrate themselves and do more in-person work. We've had a lot of transitions in community leaders, whether it's in nonprofit or higher education or the business community. So a lot of change has happened. A lot of transitions in leadership. And so, in fact, community engagement requires the strengthening and maintenance of all these important elements that you shared in the chat. But more than anything, one thing I want to take from this definition is that community engagement is the coming together of community members. These are two examples, but what I really want to bring home is it's the coming together of community members. So we have community engagement. Community engagement is the bringing together. It's the people. But then you hear this term civic engagement. So it's like, all right, so we're bringing the people together, but how does civic engagement fit into all of this? And so the civic engagement definition, according to the Curran Institute of Civic Engagement, basically highlights how civic engagement provides the platforms, systems, and spaces in which individuals can be engaged within their communities, and usually is with organizations like yours. The civic engagement competency, so how our communities work, is enhanced through high impact community involvement, And so according to the Curran Institute, as you see, their definition shows that it's more than just a set of practices, it's about conditions. It's how do we do this work? How do communities view us when we do the work? The civic engagement environment is not only informed by what we practice, but by how we are positioned in our communities. It exists in the interconnection of our community. It exists within our lives, it being civic engagement, and how we practice civic engagement. So these different pathways is tied to our access to resources and opportunities. A theme that I saw in the chat in regards to how do we do this? And resources and opportunities are dependent upon the motivations behind issues specifically connected with the community. And what I wanted to show you on this next slide to kind of show you the different ways that civic engagement work, and I'm sure a lot of you connect with this, is that there's a lot of different pathways to civic engagement. It's political involvement, is the social responsibility, the considering the welfare of others. We saw that as a theme in the pandemic a lot, like thinking about your community member with staying safe. There's research. How do we explore the dynamics of the community and its impact? It's association involvement. So it's organizations, being a part of United Way. It's also advocacy and education and using your voice to bring forth the tough questions and making choices that benefit the community. Is obviously community foundation, so philanthropic giving, but then it's also direct service. And the reason why I want to show this chart is because there is no one pathway that's best for anyone. Everyone has their lane in regards to doing this work, but it's important for us to be aware of the different ways that individuals can participate in civic engagement, which is very key to this process. And then there's the last piece. So we have community, right? A community, the people are coming together. Then we have civic engagement, and it's the different pathways that individuals may want to engage with your organizations or the community in general. But then in the back of this is the importance of equity. And a recent research by the University of Minnesota found that an equitable community is one where everyone is included in the full benefits in society. In such a community, everyone is treated with fairness, justice, and empowered to participate fully in social, cultural, and economic life. And the evidence is strong that individuals thrive in these types of communities. The social scientists behind this definition, Ora and Isaac Perlinsky, summarized the research from the University of Minnesota, noting that people in more egalitarian communities live longer and have better health outcomes. If this is the case, this means that equitable access is key. It's a set of conditions, ones that are welcoming, as many of you talked about, creating a sense of belonging, is empathic, is engaging. But the other side of equity is that there are inequitable practices, as I've discussed, that did not just happen because of the pandemic. The pandemic highlighted some aspects of that, but it is within our communities. And the more inequity within a community, the more people experience these social environments as being hostile, or they may become upset or disengaged, or maybe even hopeless about their communities because of the lack of access of having a say, being in this space. But not only do people in inequitable communities experience fewer benefits, as the pandemic has shown, they also are less likely to have access to resources that honestly are basic human rights, such as good housing, food, healthcare, employment, childcare. I'm sure you know all of this, and education. They have fewer or no opportunities for employment, or they are more than likely to live in pollution or health risk communities, dense communities. That was an important stat that came through in the pandemic, was those more dense communities that were predominantly people of color were the ones that were impacted the most because of the pandemic. But it's not just the pandemic. There's this vicious cycle that we see that hasn't started because of the pandemic. And as we continually review these things and discuss it, we are starting to realize that there's increased stress within an environment, and there's still this lingering of stress because of the pandemic. And bringing it back to the pandemic, how does this impact us in the work that we do? Well, we've discussed the pandemic, the need for sustained and reciprocal engagement, the different ways that people can enter a community in this equity piece. But honestly, what does that look like post-pandemic? We're hearing that a lot. As I said, that depends on your location, your community, the geographic areas. But what we know is that the pandemic showed inequitable practices that were longstanding, not only nationally, but globally. Our needs aren't so simply fixed either, which requires us to acknowledge what it is at this point in time, but also really think about, okay, so what can I do? I can't solve all of this because this is a lot, but I am a part of a community. I am a part of a support network. And what kind of equitable impacts through healing justice and community engagement, civic engagement, this equity piece can I use, can I do as we are trying to help our communities, but also ourselves as we are transitioning. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was introduce you to the impacts of community engagement model. This is a model that describes the outcomes that result from authentic community engagement. This was created by, you saw the second definition in regards to community engagement, is created by Building the Field of Community Engagement. And this is a collaborative group that was created by community partners in Minneapolis. It was designed to magnify and elevate the power of community engagement to change the way problems are solved and resources are invested within their communities in Minneapolis. So I wanted us to delve into this because this is one model or way to think about it in regards to what this all truly encompasses, the community, the civic engagement piece, but also equity. And so as you'll see in this chart, is that there's this outer circle, which we all know about far too well. These are the tangible, visible goals of the work that community members do together. It's what we do, it's how we lead. These are the areas that our organizations support and even provide in the community based on the needs. That's what we do. Transportation, we provide leadership, civic engagement, we worry about sustainability and environment, health, education, housing, arts, all of this, employment. But then there's this inner circle piece that's really important. The inner circle outcomes are achieved in the process of doing the work. And when I say doing the work, the foundational elements of a healthy community in their own right, it occurs through acknowledging the community member holistically. How do they identify? How do they show up and hold space? Who are they? What's their connection? What's their history? And that's important in regards to providing services. These assets in this inner circle right here, the green part, are the building blocks for positive change in all of the areas of this outer circle that we see here, and need to be attended to or strengthened in a long-term process during and beyond the process of achieving an outer. This outer piece is important. But if we don't acknowledge who the individual is, but also the impact of the pandemic to these individuals and acknowledging the healing that may need to happen, the spirituality, the trust, the relationships, then these will be harder to accomplish in some aspects. The will as a whole is fluid, it's dynamic, and it demonstrates the perpetual interconnectedness of the elements that we see happening in our community, the elements of need. And this model demonstrates the power of community engagement to impact multiple levels and systems and to create a sustained change that lasts beyond a project or a campaign. And one other piece that I want to talk about with the circle is that when I look at the circle, and I've utilized this a lot in my work, it shows us that some communities have healthy, sustainable, rich built environments around civic engagement, but the reality is that not all communities are the same. And that other communities may have suffered from decades of disinvestment, residents that have left, as I said, lack of access to opportunities where they can thrive. This leads to not only being interconnected to the networks and being able to strongly influence the policies that drive community development, but it's also important to remember the community voices. And I'm sure in this work, we all have heard the importance of community voice means inclusion, seats at the table. But the reality is that not all tables are receptive to different voices. Now, I will say, working in Dutchess and Orange, these communities have provided so many opportunities for individuals to connect through numerous initiatives and programs, through grassroots efforts. But this circle, even for those of us who practice this work, is a reminder that if we don't focus on this inner piece, this holistic aspect of this work, of what makes a human being, then our residents are going to be forgotten. They're going to lose their voices and a say in outcomes. So basically what I'm saying is that when marginalized communities are left behind in conversations of change, when specific community projects and initiatives arise without their input, it can lead to a skewed view of civic engagement. For people to exercise their civic power and voice equitably, we must change the exercise, I should say, in regards to how civic power works and making sure that voices are equitably heard. We also must change the way we think about civic engagement, and that we want to make transformative changes that are longstanding within institutions, projects, and initiatives. So this is an example and a model, and I will make sure to share. I have a bunch of links to all of this, so I'll make sure to share that. But this is one model that a lot of communities are using to really think about that equity and civic engagement piece. But I wanted to share one more quick model with you. And this model, I'm sorry, you can't see the top, but this model basically says the 6 principles for equitable and inclusive civic engagement. So in regards to communicating, so it's like, all right, the previous wheel was like, here's a way that you can think about doing this work, implementing it, but communication is really key. Creating systems that are open to implementing this work is important. And the Curran Institute, which was one of our earlier definitions in regards to civic engagement, they created this principle for equitable and inclusive civic engagement framework. And it describes essential elements of effective civic engagement in communities. It was developed by Kip Polly, a researcher, a civic engagement specialist, and community advocate at Ohio State. I wanted to share that. This was created in 2016, in case anyone is interested in looking more into his work. But the principles for equitable and inclusive civic engagement has 6 elements that particularly are important and align with what we're talking about today with the pandemic. I felt that this work and this model aligns well because it explores and discusses the complexity of doing this work. The model is a constant reminder of the importance of humility, vulnerability, honesty, and accountability in regards to thinking about, based on my positionality in my community, whether I'm an engaged citizen, I'm a community leader, I work at a higher ed institution, I'm in a nonprofit, whatever your position is, there are opportunities for you to practice different forms of these principles based on your particular needs and individuals you work alongside, but also serving your community. And so the first piece says embracing the gifts of diversity. I've talked about this a lot throughout this presentation. Our different experiences, as we know, provides a rich experience. This is how we learn and grow together. This is how we build the work that we're doing. If we're going to advance pathways to equity within our organizations in which we belong in, or as our communities, as citizens, differences must be welcome. And this principle focuses on the gifts that community members bring. That's their life experiences. There's their different skills that they have, their thinking, their innovative spirit. Embracing these gifts lead to an enriched environment, such as place-based projects that are answers to the needs of the community. This is important because if you embrace the gifts of diversity and different voices, it also can lead to thoughtful collaboration, which leads to the second piece, which I saw in the chat about the importance of realizing the role of race, power, and injustice, and also how that's connected to the history within a community. This principle is asking us to confront and become aware of the power imbalances within our community. The author in this work basically says that power dynamics are often a major factor that shapes one's experiences in a community. This leads to change of power dynamics being quite difficult at times, but also within the spaces that provide the resources. And he also goes further in by explaining how strengthening our civic engagement practices means honestly confronting resistance to shared power that traditionally worked one way within our communities or organizations. And one thing I want to add to that is that once you have these conversations and you realize the role of race and power and injustice, we have to confront the dynamics that create these difficult spaces in our communities. But then once you acknowledge that, you have to create opportunities for conversation, conversation that shows authentic leadership, empathic listening, but more than anything, acknowledging who's missing in the room, because that's a constant that we see in the work that we do. And even if you're thinking about who's missing in the room, you have to make sure that the tables are diverse, that the gifts are mentioned as previously stated in the first principle, but that you have deep dives. And this could be forums, this could be trainings, professional development. There's so many different ways to do this, but this is a key principle into doing this work in an equitable way. So if we acknowledge our gifts in our community and we confront the power imbalances, the history, we then must invite. It's more than talk. So now we have to invite, we have to listen. This principle focuses on diverse groups and community members. And when I say that, especially now, really thinking about the new generation, like Gen Z, so young people, new immigrants in our communities, citizens that are returning, who may have left but are coming back, people of color. This is very important because when we invite these groups into our spaces and in our community organizations that have historically faced barriers, it means that we listen with attention, we address concerns in ways that are relevant to their needs in the community, we frame engagements in terms of shared values and opportunity, and we cultivate a sense of belonging. And if we add to the sense of belonging, because everyone says, oh, I want to create a space of belonging, but that's very complex because not all places are welcoming. So a sense of belonging looks different. It looks different based on your focus, your purpose, the work that you do. Belonging is more than inviting someone in. It's also about safety. It's about security. It's making sure you're creating environments for community members to feel the intentionality with the work that we're doing. When community organizations are dedicated to bringing neighbors from all walks of life into the circle of the work that we do, we're acknowledging their experiences, their knowledge, and their wisdoms. This can actually help clarify, I would say, the issues and needs of the community. And this is another example that leads to sustainable engagement. And then once you invite, going to number 4, there's trust that has to happen. Trust building phase is just as important because as we know, as I have experienced myself, both working in a community and being an engaged citizen myself, when we're building equitable and inclusive engagement, it often requires building or rebuilding, which definitely is coming off of a pandemic and helping rebuilding trust between community members and institutions and the people those institutions serve. And I have seen this domestically, I've seen this globally. There's distrust that usually occurs because of the exclusion of community members, or maybe they've been let down, or maybe they're just dealing with so much that has happened during this pandemic. So this principle is key because it allows us to focus on 2 strategies that can be particularly impactful, and that's shared leadership with the work that we do, but also shared accountability. This means as organizations providing opportunities for honest communication between stakeholders. And when this is done, it encourages shared responsibility. It's shared learning. So we're working side by side. I remember someone said in the chat, no more silos. And I wish for one day there's no more silos, but this is one way that can help with the silos, is slowly opening that door for shared learning, working side by side. That's reciprocal partnership. That's that mutual reciprocal exchange that we love to discuss in the work that we do. That leads to building trust among stakeholders because it makes real promise that all stakeholders are seen and valuable. Now, of course, it's hard to reach all stakeholders, but just making the step and the process of doing some of the work and going outside of your comfort zones leads to members in the community witnessing, okay, they really want to do this work. They really do appreciate what I provide. The diverse sets of ideas and visions can be welcome now. And that leads to valuable assets in the community. It leads to strong, and I'm going to keep saying this word, sustainable partnerships and programs. And that goes to number 5. So we do all of this, right? And then we have to honor dissent and protest. Now, this is something that we saw quite a bit in the pandemic. It's something I talk to my students about. And in this principle, according to Holly, the strength of the diversity in our community relies on our ability to accept, respect our differences. That includes opposition and questions. Difference leads to strengthening civic engagement within a community. Change can't occur without having honest, difficult conversations and acknowledging the opportunity for growth and development with the work we do. What I've learned working in higher ed and nonprofits is that conflict is just going to happen. You can't really get away from it. I'm sorry. But conflict, if it's done in a respectful manner, it can be powerful. The key from this principle is to remember that diversity is strengthened through acknowledging the differences, active listening, engaging to fully understand what is occurring within the community. Disagreement actually, as I have learned, can actually help stakeholders and leaders stay focused on the new possibilities in the work that's being done. And then the last piece of this, before I transition to you, number 6 is community change. Community change is hard. If we're being honest, change is hard. Change is the most constant thing that we have in society. There's always change every day, every hour, every minute, especially in the work that we do, especially coming often sort of in the pandemic right now. Who you see, you engage with, you support, you work with, it is a constant state of change. Our communities are a flux of systems of change every single day. And as the author highlights, change is difficult for many of us. I agree. Change is a behavior, it's attitudes, it's belief that requires that a person navigates a stressful process psychologically, and yet communities are always in a state of change. So it's really hard for us sometimes to psychologically accept that, but we're in a continual state of change. Our neighbors move in and out. Our businesses, as we saw in the pandemic, opened and closed, or they moved on. And then the fun thing of the pandemic, new technologies, right? So we have all these things that's changed the way we communicate. A lot of things have altered how we define our community even at this time. And this couldn't be more of a true statement, because when we think about the pandemic's impact on our community, it has required us to fully acknowledge who's here. Are the needs still the same? Have they evolved? Or are they worse? Have they gotten better? And how have I played a role in that, in creating this democratic society of support? And so to be engaged in a community for any amount of time, I would say, means entering into this difficult process of change. And possibly many times, as we know in the work that we do, but that requires flexibility. If we acknowledge that there will be seasons of change, it creates a healthy environment to have honest, consistent conversations about how we do the work, who is engaged in the work, who should be, but above all else, creating environments that ensure community changes are equitable and meaningful. The power to do this and implement equitable engagement is based on the systems and structures within our communities and our organizations. And of course, I really want to acknowledge this is general, this is more general, and this definitely depends on your location and the work that you do. But I do think we can strive to create equitable and inclusive environments, especially within our networks. It is not easy. It is constant. It's not something that can just be done in one session. It has to be a constant state of practice in order for it to be sustained to do this work. So I just want to remind you that this is the Current Institute. I'm going to be able to share some things at the end in regards to, I believe, slides, but also some of the links to this, because I think this is a really important guide to really think about transformative change in regards to your work. So being mindful of time, we're going to connect and we're going to see how this goes. I am working with Melissa and the crew to create breakout groups, and it's going to be very quick, just being mindful of time. It'll be about 10 minutes, and I think when we do this work, I remember we used to do it in person. We were able to just do breakout groups and sit at tables and talk. But I also believe that we can provide opportunities to connect with each other during this time right now. There's so many people on this call with so many unique backgrounds. And so what I want to do is provide an opportunity for you to connect with each other in small groups. So you're gonna be put in a random breakout group, and you don't have to answer all of these questions because you are probably all in different positions in regards to the impact of the pandemic. But the three key questions that we want to go through is, how was your organization impacted? But what ways do you think you provided equitable action? And then the third piece, are there opportunities for growth for you? So maybe you're at number 3. You provided some things, but you still think there's opportunities, whether it's for your staff, your volunteers, your programs, your board, to advance equitable engagement. So we want you to think about those things for about 10 minutes. And then the last 5 minutes will be kind of more of a wrap up for that. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to transition it over to the United Way crew to see how this is going to work. But we're going to do our best.
Thank you so much, Cami. And actually, if you could put that slide up one more time, I'm going to ask everyone to take a photo of it just to make sure you have your questions before I break you into teams. And
Yes.
while Cami does that, I'm also going to ask my United Way staff, you're all going to be in your own separate rooms, but don't get attached to your rooms because I might have to move you to make sure that there's one of you in each room. So just bear with me for one moment, and Cami's going to put that slide back up.
Yeah, I'm putting it in the chat. Questions in the chat too.
Perfect.
Let me do this, and then let me share my screen one more time. Well, it's not the last time. Let's see. Okay, so this is the question right here. Let's do that. Okay.
All right, so I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to take out your phone, take a quick photo. That'll be the easiest way. And then I'm going to go ahead and put you into your rooms. All right, hopefully at least one of you in each will have the photo on your phone. All right. So I am just going to try to break it so not all of the United Way team are into the same room. I'm just about ready. Okay, here we go. And make sure you accept the invitation to move to your room. Muriel, I'm going to put you in a breakout room.
Melissa, I'm in group 4. I'm sorry. I'm on 2 screens here.
The group 4?
I'm trying to get off my phone and onto my computer, but I don't know if I can do that. I'm in room 4, right? Is that
Okay.
what room we're in?
All right, just sent you in.
Yeah, okay. All right. So now
How'd it go, Deidre?
Oh, it went very well. Thanks. Was fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. I'm gonna 2 more minutes and I'm going to bring everyone back. They're in rooms right now.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry I missed that. This is so informative.
Good. Yeah, Cammie's wonderful.
Are you happy with how it's going?
Yes.
Good.
Sorry, teacher, just saw your most recent text. My
Okay.
my droid is screwing up the group text.
That's okay. Oh, it just started snowing here.
Yeah, it's really coming down here. Do you live right in Poughkeepsie? I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm over by Vassar College.
Nice. That's a great area.
Yeah, I love Arlington.
Yeah. Have you been to the new Greek restaurant over there?
No, I haven't yet.
Right.
No, I have to give that a try.
They have a Beyond Gyro, vegetarian, so it's like the best
Oh,
thing.
do they?
Yep.
Lovely. So the food is good there.
I mean, that's the only thing I've had, but I love it.
Well, if a restaurant can do a good vegetarian meal, then they can usually do, other things well.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna bring everyone back. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to turn it back to Cammie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you all for trying out something that we wanted to create. We wanted to make sure that as you show up on what for a lot of you is a busy snow day and so much going on, if you're here, and yes, you're hearing from me as a facilitator, I want to make sure that you're also connecting with each other. And quickly, we have 2 minutes left, but did anyone want to share like anything surprising or something that they heard that they would like to share with the group. One thing I liked about our group that we discussed was not only was it conversation about opportunities to do the work, are there barriers in regards to doing the work, because that's a reality as well. So did anyone for next 2 minutes want to share anything the group discussed?
I would, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So what I noted in our brief exchange was the urgency that prompted creativity and forced by necessity many to reconsider how they do the work they do in a reality that has suddenly shifted. And that was certainly the case at my own large organization, Vassar College.
Yeah, I've asked it.
It was actually amazing to see that beast move as quickly as it did. But then, of course, the many smaller organizations among us were suddenly thrust into a new world, and they had to think on their feet and act quickly. And it did seem that the good work was able to continue nonetheless.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gary. It gives me a lot of hope because it was hard. It was really hard. It was such a swift change. I remember that I was at an institution, I was at Bard full-time did, and I just remember it just like happened, and it was like, and do it. And what you also realize is it wasn't even the inequitable resources for our community members, for our institutions as well. Not everyone had the same level of resources to kind of pull off certain things. And then we realized that too, and our students didn't have that as well. And like, how did we respond to that? And I think some of the practices that we were able to acknowledge and implement, a lot of institutions are starting to keep because of the student voice and need at that time. But yeah, also the small institutions. And then that's where I saw in the community, you know, these grassroots networks of folks just coming together and sharing their resources and collaborating and finally doing the thinking that we want to see for such a long time. So this just gives me hope. Like, yes, it was very difficult and it was hard, but then there was fruitful things that came out of it as well. Did one other person want to share something? You could raise your hand or
Yeah, I'm
Liz?
Liz
Yeah.
for, and I think exactly what Gary said, right? People came together, volunteered, and came up with ideas, thinking out the box to solve problems. But while I was in my group, I kept coming back to the question, right? What did we do to increase inclusivity and opportunity, as well as what plans do we have?
Yeah.
And what did come out was, especially with food pantries and volunteerism, is that the wealthy integrated with the haves, integrated with the have-nots. And so one organization looked at ways to help those folks get to know each other better and understand each other better. And just like you said, listen to the voices of the have-nots.
Yeah.
And of course, several organizations did diversify their boards. And I do want to speak to and advocacy increased, especially when it came to education and the digital divide.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that we were answering that question. What opportunities did you have to increase inclusivity and civic engagement?
Right.
And it really, for my group, came down to volunteerism.
Wow, thank you so much, Liz. That's just wonderful. And thank you, Gary, so much for sharing your summaries from your group. And let me get back to sharing my screen, because I definitely saw that as well. Like I said, it was like there was a divide, and then it just forced us all to come together because it was the most interesting thing. Like, no one could hide from this. Like, it wasn't just in one country or one city or one community. Everyone was deeply impacted by this, and it really forced this vulnerability and humility that I haven't seen. I mean, I'm a little bit younger here. I haven't seen in my lifetime, or have heard about historically. So I'm going to quickly just wrap things up for you. And it kind of talks about what Gary and Liz discussed. So let me go back to my slide here. So what I wanted to do, thank you so much for just participating today, listening to all the different things and connecting with each other. But I just wanted to end with, like, 5 key takeaways towards, let me fix this, towards equitable action. I think, we've talked about how to revise, assess, and analyze steps towards both professionally and personally creating and expanding environments to have true, sustainable, and reciprocal engagement through implementing equity in the work that we do. Diva Woodley, she's a political scientist who recently, she released this book on the politics of common sense called Reckoning. And there's a chapter where she discusses politics of care and the idea of healing justice in connection with social justice movements. And I bring this up because a key factor for us doing this work in an equitable way, I feel, as going back to the impacts chart, is healing, acknowledging how the pandemic has greatly impacted us physically, mentally, emotionally, and in a holistic way, and then bringing those experiences into spaces where we are honest, acknowledge, and we can engage and serve. This means we want to be in a social conscious space to implement equity. And so she has these 5 key takeaways that I wanted to share with you. The first one being showing up. So when we show up and doing this work is more than just attendance and being in a space. It means, as so many of you have said today, authentically showing up. That's what happened during the pandemic. It means showing your commitment to the cause, clarifying your intentions, and listening to the needs of those around you, including the recipients of your services, and not causing harm when you're showing up into these spaces. And continuing on with spaces, it also means holding space. And to hold space is to create, how do I say this? A protected place, one that gives space for stillness and preparation, research and exploration, listening to understanding the needs such as reflection and accountability, innovation and healing. All of this happened when we were forced to hold spaces on all of our sides during the pandemic. And I hope that can continue. That also means intergenerational independence and dependence, I would say. We saw that quite a bit in the pandemic, where different generations and leaders came together to work alongside each other. And that is going to be imperative in guiding us towards a shift in the narratives around doing this work. It also means integrating differing opinions around the table. One thing I always share with my students is that the single hero story is not sustainable. If one wants to move forward within their work, they really have to build a network. They have to work with their communities, and they have to make sure they have the resources to be heard and to support those that they're engaging with. The last one is, well, not the last one, second to last is accountability. As community leaders, we're required to, or expected to, justify our decisions. And this is what an engaged citizen is. But if we want to implement equitable practices within our work, it means doing the work, the research, reviewing the best practices, going to events like these, learning about different models. This shows that we value our citizens, that we're willing to have the tough conversations, and that we're willing to understand our blind spots so that we can grow and evolve and create societies and environments that are healthy, that are caring and engaging for all. But in order to do this, it leads to the last piece, and that's care. And when I say care, obviously, in a lot of ways, we're all in caring positions. So not only caring for our communities, but also showing care and grace for ourselves. We have to acknowledge that none of us are the same since 2020. We actually are close to a 3-year mark, and we've learned to use our innovative minds and spirits and create, in some scenarios, magic. And the reality is, with doing that, it required a lot of energy, and we're tired. We hold the stories and the trauma and the pain and loss from those that we work with and have experienced ourselves. But as we just discussed, there is hope. And so my last thought for you today is to think about, how are you going to honor and care for yourselves in doing this work? I think in a lot of ways, when we do this mission-driven work, is greater than ourselves, but it's also easy to allow our individual well-being to take a back seat. And if we want to do this work, it requires us to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. I have to go back to the superhero piece. The superhero syndrome is real, and we all want to uplift and use our power in our community. But in order to sustain ourselves, we have to build networks of support, collaboration, share resources, but also remember to pause for ourselves, to breathe, to ground ourselves into this work, which will remind us of our purpose and cause and allow us to continue to do this work, which is not easy. This is heart space work. It's work that can be lonely and isolated. And I say that personally and professionally. I've been doing this work for a very long time, and not everyone understands what we do. And we we get a lot of heat from our community members, and people don't always understand what we're trying to do. But I know that at the end of the day, we're human beings and we care and we want to do it. But in order to do that, it means connecting with your networks. As I say, put your mask on first, and making sure that you're doing your best to take care of yourselves in this work. So yay, superheroes. And I have any questions? I don't know. I'm out of time, but we'll see once I stop sharing my screen. But I just wanted to share my information really quickly. There's a lot of different ways that you can connect with me. Social media is not my thing anymore, but I use LinkedIn, which I guess is social media. And you can scan a QR code to my consulting website, as well as just email me. I actually respond to my emails. You can scan a QR code with your phone. That's another way. You can go to my website to see some of the work I do. I also work for Partners for Campus Community Engagement. So that's another way. If you're a higher institution or nonprofit and you want to connect with another network that is specifically focusing on civic and community engagement throughout New York and Pennsylvania, I also am connected with that. And you can scan the QR code for that. These are resources. I saw that a lot of you want to have access to the slides, which I will share. I'm also going to add some sources to the end with hyperlinks so that you can click on those and have access to some of the models that I was talking about today. But with that being said, I thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. It's just reminded me the importance of this work, and so happy to share this virtual space on a snow day for many of you, but I hope it's not too bad. And I think I'm out of time now, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Cami. Let's give her a huge, loud round of applause, as well as our virtual. So thank you so much. It's always just so lovely to work with you. You're so amazing. Definitely, personally one of my favorite community folks, and this is just an incredible presentation. I know I saw so many folks commenting in the chat, so we're just so appreciative of you, all the work you do, and this phenomenal presentation. And I know we all got some key takeaways, and I love those models you shared. So thank you so much, Cami. So does anyone have any questions in the chat? I didn't see any questions in the chat box, but if anyone wants to ask any,
I see a lot of self-care tips.
yeah, I put some of mine in there too. All right, well then, so I just want to say, speaking of diversity, equity, inclusion, which we learned a lot about, you can still sign up for our MLK Equity Challenge. The link is in the chat box, but if one of my team members can put it in again, that would be fantastic. We are on, I believe, day 7, so you can get access to all of the resources from the last couple of, the last week, and then also participate each day. If you participate, you'll get a link to an article, video, and podcast around different aspects of diversity, equity, inclusion. And now, I know it's all you've been looking forward to it, our mug contest. So I'm going to give you all a 5-minute break, but when you come back, please bring back your favorite mug. You can also, of course, grab yourself some coffee or tea or what have you. And then Rebecca is going to be our judge, pick the best mug, and that person will get a prize. So I'll see you back here at 10:40. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much. I see cameras are going on, so that's fantastic. So if you can all hold up your favorite mug right in front of your camera, really close, perfect, like how Joanne's doing it, so that Rebecca can.
Central Perk.
Yeah,
Oh, Deidre, Central Perk.
that's fun. So we got Central Park, Make It Merry, we got a snowman, and I got the Golden Girls, tennis and Prosecco, some nice floral designs, a kitty design, family, hearts, Mickey Mouse. Ooh, the dinosaur, very cool. Nice glass mug, nice homemade mug. Eeyore.
So many great mugs.
Yeah, gosh. Are there more on the second page, Rebecca? Not to
A
make your
couple
job
more.
harder.
Yes.
I see Snoopy, a bestie, two bestie, yeah. I like Rachel.
I was
So
just gonna say
clever.
that Rachel Wood, right?
Where's
The
Rachel?
princess.
Let me see.
Rachel Wilson from the.
Wilson, sorry.
It's okay. I stole
Wilson.
it from my daughter. She got it when she turned 19 while she was finishing basic training and off at tech school for the.
Oh, Rachel, of course.
Awesome.
So is Rachel our winner, Rebecca?
Yes, Rachel's our winner.
Ah.
Yes, and like Rachel was just sharing, her daughter is in service, so we're very thrilled about all of Rachel's service and her family service. So thank you so much for being here, Rachel. Congratulations, and we'll get you your prize virtually after today. So thank you everyone for your participation, and be prepared next time because we love to run this contest. So I am really thrilled to introduce our next speaker. So it is my pleasure to introduce Jessica Shear, an incredible fundraiser who will give us some tips and advice for fundraising in this weird sort of post-COVID economy. So welcome, Jessica. Jessica Shear supports social sector organizations with strategic development and management support so that they can meet and present the future needs of their causes and communities. Prior to consulting, she served as the COO for the National Eating Disorders Association. There, she strengthened the financial operations, created the organization's first impact measurement system, and led the program development teams through new strategic growth. Previously, she was the inaugural executive director for the EB Research Partnership, where she enacted the organization's first fundraising system and supervised successful digital fundraising and major gift campaigns, raising millions for critical medical research needs. Prior to EB Research Partnership, Jessica worked in leadership positions at Lady Gaga's Born This Way Foundation and DoSomething.org, which is so cool. She started her career in development positions with Greystone Foundation, a noted social enterprise and social service organization, the Nonprofit Finance Fund. She holds a bachelor's in government from Clark University and a master's in nonprofit management from the New School. So we are in for a wonderful presentation, and welcome, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be able to spend some time with you today. I look forward to getting to know you a little bit and learning more about your organizations. We'll have more of, I'm hoping we'll have more of a conversation and exchange regarding, like all the amazing things and, things and strategic things that we need to think about when it comes to fundraising this year. So, since we've gone in and out of break rooms, I hope you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing your background with us. I have a little prompt, but I thought if we could all just in the chat, just reshare your name, your organization, and where you're based. And that can either be like your organization or where you physically are, since I know so many of us are doing remote work. Be great just to get a sense of who's in our virtual room with us. Right, that's great. Oh my gosh, you guys so fast. All right. So what we're going to talk about today is right, trying to think about some of our North Stars for fundraising. The past 3 years have moved so quickly and have changed and evolved this, as all of you have spoke about, in so many ways. And in the work with my clients, there's a few themes that keep popping up and how it relates to the efficacy of our fundraising efforts. And that really comes back to, I wish I had a third C for you here to keep it memorable, but it revolves around the idea of clarity, community, and relevancy. So we'll get into that today. All right, and so here I'm trying to. Melissa generously shared my bio with you, but this is a little bit about me again. Just to say that development has pretty much always been a part of my job description, except for my most recent chapter as a consultant, where I'm helping others fundraise instead of doing it myself. And I've been able to cover all the things that the leading strategies for foundations, right? Peer-to-peer fundraising, my grant work, individual giving, you've named it, I've probably done it or dabbled in it at least. So, but I'm eager to have the conversation with you all to find out what's working for you and what are you considering as you move forward and what you might need help with. So I hope we can all be a support to each other. And I have some support too. I'm really fortunate to be, and I was brought into our discussion today as an invitation from the Hudson Valley Nonprofit Consultants. And so we are a collective, a professional network of all kinds of folks who help serve nonprofits. And we have management consultants, strategic planning consultants. There are web designers, there are IT support folks. It is videographers, graphic designers. It's really a wide and deep community, and it's been a pleasure to be there. We're, distinctly focused on, serving Hudson Valley nonprofits. And so, that really is, the northern part of, mid and upper Hudson Valley. So, having their expertise and, that in this collective has really been wonderful to kind of learn what's happening on the ground in all of our communities. So I encourage you to check us out. We are pretty active on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So, and every month our members will come up with, or about every month we'll share something with our community. So I hope it's of service to you. All right. So in terms of our time today, I thought what we could first of all is just kind of take stock a little bit about what 2022 and what 2023 could be. And then we'll go deeper into some of the themes, right? Sharing some best practices for success. And we'll go deeper into what clarity, community, and relevancy mean. And then of course, take some questions and answers. So. And I encourage you to please use the chat and of course, speak up too. That's always nice. If you have a question about something that we're covering or, want to respond. So, okay. So 2023, we're not quite sure what it's going to be like. And I felt like this meme just kind of summed it up. Let's try not to set the bar too high and let's keep our optimism mild, because there are a lot of positive and negative things pulling at us right now. And, I've heard the idea that, we really just want 2023 to behave because 2022 and 2021 was just too much. And so I'd be curious to hear what you all think. So some of the big things that we do know right now and how it relates to the nonprofit sector, I've been doing some reading and talking to clients and other communities as well. here are the big ideas, right, that are floating around. Inflation, we all are feeling it. Many experts are saying that we'll continue to feel it for most of this year, and that as we hopefully get to the later end of 2023, it will have less of an impact than it is now. It'll stabilize and go down. So we can maybe be cautiously optimistic there. The big thing that everyone's saying in whispered tones, or maybe not whispered tones anymore, is recession. So that is a distinct possibility. Many of the economists are saying that we are seeing a tightening or correction in certain parts of the labor market, and largely that has been really in the tech and media spheres. And so it hasn't hit the general overall market yet. There's still a pretty tight labor market. I think many of us feel that in our own lives and our nonprofits with open positions. So and just how this relates to fundraising, though, I think, if you do have an idea of your donor base, and if there is a strong representation from certain kinds of professional sectors, it's good to be aware of that and thinking about, well, how does the economy affect my donor base, right? And so I think those of us, and I think that's like less likely in Hudson Valley to some extent, about how maybe the tech tightening right now won't have as an impact as if we were like, Silicon Valley nonprofits. So a tight labor market, that's our kind of like third thing here to think about, or second. It's I know we're all feeling that right now. We're feeling that in our frontline positions that either have stayed open or need to be refilled a little bit more than we would like them to be, as well as mid-level markets as well. And so there's some things to think about there, and a challenge we all feel. One of the big things we have seen is the increased need for cybersecurity. Now, we as nonprofits have always had probably more of a steeper learning curve when it comes to this, and enacting next level security to protect our donors' information and to protect our website and other systems, especially those that are carrying patient care information or kind of confidential information about those that we're serving. And that is that need and that gap, really, we need to do our best to try and close that, because with the rise of AI and bots and other things, it is becoming the attacks on our systems are becoming frankly kind of relentless. So there are things that we do need to kind of think about in terms of how that shows up in fundraising. There are screens that we can do for our donation processors and things that we should definitely be thinking about. And I encourage you, if you do ever have some extra time, to kind of think about your IT work. In terms of kind of bigger funding for those of us that are really hooked into government funding. So I know some other folks said in the breakout room from the last session about how there was a lot of money around during the pandemic years if you were direct service, and a lot of that is drying up now, right? That has come to its conclusion. And we also had the benefit of having those PPP loans, right? And the vast majority of us, I actually haven't met a client yet that had to repay it, but I'm hoping that provides some cushioning for many of us that need to have that as we kind of have to retool again about where to go and how to find things. So folks, the other big thing that's coming down the pike, and we're going to be feeling this in a really good way for the next 2 years, is the money that came out of the Inflation Reduction Act. And there were billions of dollars set aside for affordable housing and energy efficiency projects. And I bring this up specifically. I know that, you know, we're talking to human services groups mostly here. Some of you might be doing some of this work, but when we think about the economic burden of what's happening for households in our communities, the folks that have to use food pantries, the folks that need workforce development support, one of the biggest ways that we know to help them is actually doing some energy efficiency work, right? Because when you think about where folks have to spend the majority of their money, whether it's rent, it's their utility costs, and then it's food. And the vast majority of our housing needs to be updated and is incredibly inefficient. And now there's a lot of rebates, like cash on hand, and other kind of programs that they're specifically rooting towards low income, extremely low income communities. And it can be a really wonderful way to, give people a leg up and help make their lives easier. If we can make their homes more comfortable and more affordable. That way they'll have more funds for other things. So, that was long, but the last thing is AI. I think we've all, I don't know if you've seen some of the headlines lately, but AI is artificial intelligence is doing a lot of work with writing now, and it's actually become pretty good in terms of ChatGPT. So there's some incredible things. The same technology that makes the chatbots work on websites. It's an incredible tool. And Melissa, could you like to say a little bit about ChatGPT is for those who don't know? If you have firsthand user experience on that.
Sure. I don't know if Liz is on right now, because in the fundraising department, I know they're loving it. They're putting donor appeal letters through, trying to, lessen some of the asks that are a little bit blunt on our end, and trying to. So I don't know, Liz, if you want to come off mute if you're on.
It's great in the outside world, but in education, kids will cheat, right?
Oh,
and the
yeah.
other side of that is it doesn't vet sources, so we're not sure if it's accurate. So some school districts have banned it, but the kids can do it at home. So one thing, because I'm on the Poughkeepsie Computer Science Transformation Task Force, and we talked about let the kids use it, but let them do the assessing and grade it and use it as a resource tool to enrich literacy.
Right. Oh, that's terrific. And Bertu, that I see your note too. Yes, college professors are nervous. And I think there was a big article in New York Times just this past week about how what they're trying to do, like college professors have to redesign their coursework. Like you can't do essays anymore because the bots have gotten so good at writing the essays that it's not the intellectual exercise that it's meant to be. So there unfortunately will probably be a lot more group work and live kind of like, live discussions about stuff. So, but yes, in terms of what it means for us in fundraising, it could mean like stronger and more personalized ways and more efficient ways to run email campaigns, and do the rest. And there's a lot of great work. Gary, thank you for that the Atlantic article too. Yes, I heard about that one. All right. So those are the big things. Are there any other things that are, we'll go into small groups now, but I just want to do a quick poll. And Melissa, I don't know if you or someone on your team can help us with this one, but was just really curious, like quick take, if you were to look at the magic 8-ball for what you think this year is, what's it going to be? Do you feel like this is going to be a growth year for you in fundraising? And it can be in any strategy. Will you have some growth? Really curious what you all think. It's so curious to see what it is. All right, it looks like we're kind of like in the middle. I know there's still some more folks that need to reply, but I think most of us, it's just too early in the year to know what 2023 is going to be, right? And there's probably some good things and some challenges that we have to think about. But I love this. Thank you. All right. Great. So, with that, I was hoping we could do some small groups again. We will let Zoom do and Melissa and her team do their magic to put us. I think random assortment is fine. But what I'd love to know is just for you all to share a little bit with each other. It's so it's we want to take advantage of this community building opportunity, right? So the big questions are, what are your biggest fundraising priorities and strategies for the year? Are there things that you're leaning into more? Are there things that you're not going to try or that you're curious about and want to integrate into your plan for this year? And I guess, how has this changed or evolved from what you did last year? So
thanks so much, Jessica. And if everyone, again, like last time, can just take a quick photo of the questions, that's definitely the easiest way for your groups. I'm going to put you back into groups. And Jessica, what do you think, like 10 minutes?
We were thinking 15 because if our
Perfect.
groups are big,
All right.
but we can always
15 is
check
great.
back in, and you guys can always signal to us if you feel like it's time to come back.
We're doing well on timing, so 15 is great. All right, everyone. Okay. Hopefully by now you got your photograph, and I'm going to put you into your rooms. Thanks so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
And please go ahead and accept your invitation to join your room.
I have not had an invitation pop up yet on my screen.
All right, and I am assigning everyone that somehow got unassigned. So hopefully now you're getting new invitations. Okay, so everyone that's here should receive an invitation. If you haven't, let me know. Thank you. Hey, Jessica, do you want to go into a room or?
Yeah, I thought I would. I would just thought I can do that broadcast message and then I'll have the questions. How has this evolved or changed? Okay. All right, there's the broadcast.
Great.
All right, and then oh, I just pick one of the rooms right here, I guess. Okay, cool. Maybe I will jump in somewhere. Oh, they're all pretty well balanced. I'll go in a room. I'll go to 8, I guess. I mean, sorry, 5. The one room that only has 8 folks. So I'll pop in there.
Thanks.
Maybe I'll bounce around too.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump into each and just make sure everything's going well. I do have a staff person in every room, so.
Oh, great.
Thanks, Jessica.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome back, everyone. We're just going to give it another 18 seconds till the room's officially closed. Wonderful. Looks like
Hey.
everyone's back.
Hey, all.
Turning it back to Jessica. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to keep it on gather review for this next part, but I'd love to hear from you about what are the things you heard in your session, about what are some of the similarities of like fundraising strategies, or I mean our group talked about events, right? That some organizations need to think differently about how you're doing events. Some of the large scale ones continue, to be challenging because they're, number one, I think more expensive. Number two, your donor base isn't responding and as enthusiastically maybe as they did in years before, and it might have highlighted, some events that like weren't serving the organization or the development calendar all that well to begin with. It's really time to retool it. So that events was a common theme in ours. Also the idea of thinking about all the fundraising strategies that are being put into play and trying to figure out like what are the ones that we have more confidence in, because frankly there's kind of threats to each one of them can have their own thing that they're dealing with about your confidence on whether you can get the grants, the new ones that you tried, or whether your renewals are going to come back. Those are all things to think about. We also talked a little bit about the time of the year, that when and how we do events and who else in the community is active at that time period can impact that. So we spoke a little bit about like how do we articulate what makes us special, and there's some strategy there about how we pull that messaging together. And one of the other things I shared is that, it seems like everyone in the world does Giving Tuesday now. And it is an amazing kind of cultural movement, right? When I was at an organization, we first started, it was in its second year, the whole concept of this about, taking the narrative back from consumerism on Thanksgiving weekend and bringing it back into our communities, similar kind of to the Shop Small movement, right? That's a really empowering thing for us. But now everyone's doing it, and it's really hard for us to even talk to our own people that day. So I definitely, encourage, definitely do something. It doesn't, but if you haven't seen a lot of performance that day, save your energy and save your strategy for a day that's more relevant to your community. If your awareness month is in May, maybe there's a May date and like a small mini campaign that you can do around email to really hone your folks into paying attention to you on a day that really matters. So thinking about how it kind of serves your mission and serves the overall issue that you connect with is great. So trying to think about how we can save and redirect our energy for stuff that's really going to make a difference. So I see some stuff in the chat, other themes that come up for stuff. Okay, so we discussed the importance of social media presence, the need to step outside of our comfort zones and post make thank you posts on social media acknowledging supporters. That's really important. To put a finer point on that, doing some thinking about who your donors are and what kind of social media they use will make a big difference, because there are a lot of choices out there right now, and those communities are dynamic too. Facebook is still very relevant, and certainly relevant for older folks. We know demographically that there's still high usage with folks that are 50, 60 and onward. And, other, folks who are under the age of 30 are going to be on TikTok. And so there are different places for different parts of your community, and just thinking about what your messages are and how they might sit in those different places. And I think that overall message of like, just post, like, yes, you don't have to worry about over posting anymore. People will not unfollow you. The bigger thing is posting enough so you actually end up on people's feeds. So people are checking their social media much more frequently than they were years ago. We tend to go on, 8 to 10 times a day or more. And folks will spend hours, especially on TikTok. So I think the other big thing I want you all to know, and it is still a surprise to folks, but Facebook and Instagram and others will make you pay for you to reach your own audience. Let me say that again. If you have 1,000 people following you on your Facebook, but you don't boost any of your posts, you are only going to reach 20 to 30 people organically. That's the way the algorithm is built. I encourage you, if you have any social, like if you have any little bit of budget, like even putting $10 on a post to make sure it gets like actually seen, even $10 will be enough for Facebook to then reward it for any kind of like interaction it gets. And then it might spread a little bit more within your own circle. But the platform is built to make money, not to share messages. So just know that, like, if you can do some planning in your budget, save even some small incremental amounts of money to boost the messages that really mean something to you, because it'll be worth it. Okay, I'm sorry, I spoke too much. Caitlin, you had your hand up for a while. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had a great group. I was really lucky. So I actually wrote some notes. We did talk a lot about the constant need for posting on social media. So you were absolutely right on the money about that. But we also had some issues with social media. Dress for Success actually is going old school now. Social media is not really working for them. So they're doing ask letters instead. And they've been fundraising. They've been asking a lot of organizations for donations. And there were some really fantastic ideas for fundraising in our group. So I just thought I would share some. Someone was able to raise over $40,000 on this fill a food box campaign on Facebook. So that was really amazing.
Oh, wow.
$40,000. That was fantastic. But their Facebook interactions were high, but their fundraising actually came from Road Rally. So I would really be interested to learn more about what that is. They go through local small businesses and they ask them for support and donations, and then they become a stop on a scavenger hunt where people go around and they have these little activities. And some
Sounds fun.
small businesses even submit prizes for raffles. So they make a lot of money through this road rally. So I thought that was a really fantastic idea. And we had somebody mention that monetary donations are really fantastic, but donations of food and art supplies are just as helpful, if not even more so. So I thought that was important to mention. So thank you.
It's wonderful. Thank you. All right. I saw another hand up, but I don't see it anymore.
Jeannie had her hand up as well.
Oh,
Had my hand up
okay.
for a second. Yeah, so we talked about, the strategies, maybe for the organization haven't necessarily changed. However, trying to get to the people is a new strategy. What worked before is no longer working. You have to be really creative and kind of meet them wherever you can, whether it's, technologically or in person or traveling and stuff. So that in itself is a strategy. We talked about diversifying funding and things like that. And then we also talked about, evaluating how we're doing our fundraising. And I think it was Grace Smithhouse that said, they're collaborating with their entire team to do it. And I know here at United Way, we do as well. They all know it's a team effort. You'll see my fundraisers are on this, and CI will be supporting them at their events, and it goes back and forth, but it has to be a team effort, especially where, most of us are smaller nonprofits. So Yeah, so that was it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, George, why don't we go to you and then
Yeah, I just want to
move
give
on
some
to our
feedback to Jenny
Yeah.
on United Way, because I do contribute to other organizations, and probably the frequency from United Way is less than from Alzheimer's, Heart Association, or the Lung Association in terms of soliciting for donations.
I'm sorry, you're saying we solicit less or they solicit less? I couldn't hear you.
They appear to send out more notices soliciting for donations.
Than we do.
Alzheimer's than United Way, yes.
Wow, that's a very interesting comment, because we're always concerned we're sending out too much, right? Liz and Susan, I see them on here. So that's a very interesting comment, unless you just happen to not be on all of our lists. So I'll ask Melissa where you end
I
up.
get plenty from United Way.
You do, you get it.
Yes,
But not as much as the others.
that's correct.
Okay, good to hear. Thank you, George.
Yep.
We're gonna definitely have a conversation about that internally.
That's awesome.
And I
Thank
just
you.
want to, Jessica, I think you're probably going to cover this later, but I know in like some of our conversations one-on-one, this was a big topic that came up there. People are scared to send too many emails and all that stuff. So I know you're going to cover that, but I did just want to drop that in your ear because I think it's really relevant to where this conversation's been going. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll give a short answer now and then we'll get into it. You don't have to worry about, you don't. I think if you are concerned, certainly with social media, you don't have to worry about posting too much. Emails too, but like a user behavior on emails is much different than it used to be. And people don't unsubscribe as much. They're just more likely not to open it. So you pay attention to your open rates. You get to understand, we'll talk a little bit about that. And then when it comes to mailing, since those do cost you real money and time to do mailings, thinking about how maybe you can try a segment out of a small part of your list to see if that additional solicitation that you do by mail was worth doing, right? As compared to maybe a control group. So we can talk about that more, but here, we'll jump in now. Thank you. All right, here you go. All right, so we talked about our major themes for our group. So let's go into this. When we think about kind of the bigger practices, right? Like let's pull up a little bit and think about what are like the best practices when we think about organizations. This is in the Evelyn and Walter Haas Jr. Fund did a study on this several years ago about this, and they looked at 16 nonprofits of theirs of grantees that really had breakthrough success when it came to fundraising. And these were the things that came up for them, right? That the organization found that like fundraising was really core to their organization's identity. So this goes to some of the earlier conversation about like feeling bad about doing solicitation. You can't feel bad about representing your cause and trying to power it up. And you all have incredible missions and a lot to be proud about. And so inviting other people into that work with you is really an invitation. Think of it as an invitation and a partnering. It's not like there shouldn't be any guilt in this. Second thing is that the fundraising is distributed broadly across staff, board, and volunteers. And this really means that like you need more than your 2 or 3, if you're even lucky to have 3 development staff, that everyone needs to think of themselves as being an ambassador in the work. And that is really important for equity purposes as well. We know that development staff on average have higher burnout rates than other kinds of staff in nonprofits. And so sharing the responsibility of doing this work is important. Like they can be the coaches and the quarterbacks figuring out what plays get done and how to organize the work. And they'll certainly be doing their fair share of the cultivation and more than their fair share of the cultivation and solicitation, but it's going to be important to share that. Third, fundraising succeeds because of authentic relationships with donors. So that comes to our community point of what our conversation is today. That especially when it comes to major gifts, right? Like you don't get major gifts unless you really are connecting with the folks that you're inviting to be a part of it. And then finally, fundraising is characterized by persistence, discipline, and intentionality, right? That, entering every part of our strategy and every part of the work that we do with those values is important to seeing this through and seeing incremental and hopefully breakthrough success. I think there's a problem with the idea about of breakthrough success, like it just comes all of a sudden, and it usually is the result of persistent incremental work. And then when you move yourself up into a new level, things become easier, right? And it becomes more efficient. So, okay. Moving on, we have, I'm just moving inside the thing. Oh, come on. All right. I just wanted to put this up as a place to get a support as you think about your fundraising strategies, and that's community-centric fundraising, similar to what Cami brought to us this morning about how important equity is in the work that we do. That goes for fundraising, and there are a lot of things about the best practices of fundraising and how we were kind of all brought up and taught about how to do fundraising well, where we're really centering what the donor is and what their needs are. And we know that in order to build more equitable organizations that are truly in tune with our communities, that we can't have that mindset anymore. It's not only about the donor 100% of the time. We really need to think differently, right? And community-centric fundraising is a movement of thousands of fundraising professionals from around the country that are working to reimagine those practices about how do we make these things more equitable and accessible. And it's a lot of practitioners, grant writers, people who are doing events, folks that are doing direct solicitation. It is free to be a part of it. They have some great resources on their website. They also have a really vibrant Slack channel to do learning. So I found it very helpful in my own continual learning on this, and encourage you folks to check it out. There are also, kind of the other more traditional places to do learning for communities of practice. For grant work, Foundation Directory Online, and increasingly Inside Philanthropy. I think their news articles are really compelling to give you some insight beyond just grant behavior. That's good to know about foundations. So those are two things that can help you. Overall, our theme here, right, when we think about ways to make 2023 better, the big theme that comes up for me and my clients is moving really from a transactional mindset to one that's value centered. So trying to think more concretely about the through line in the communications we do with folks, that we want to both share our values and have it be a point of exchange with our donors. So with every call to action or request that you do, thinking about it as a way to learn about what your donors care about, just learning a little bit more about them. And when we keep our values centered in our messages and in our interactions, that good things will come. So. Okay, moving into our first point, clarity. Context matters. So we think about our communications, whether we're texting with our donors, emailing, doing letters, interacting on social media, being really clear about what your communication is going to be about and what that call to action is going to be so critical. And just thought it'd be helpful to maybe think about like why this is true. You know, what's kind of vying for folks' attention. We know that there are now 120 work emails that just a regular person will get. They're looking at 2.5 hours on social media. So that goes to our point of you should definitely be there and don't worry about overexposure. And then of course, folks are still watching TV too. So there's a lot of things to engage in throughout the day. And a really important thing here is about how much time do our messages get. Email still seems to be the most prevalent and used for a prevalent message for folks to get to reach their supporters. And we have been watching over the last several years how long it takes for, you know, how long people engage with an email. So like once they've decided to open it, how long are they going to spend reading it? It used to be 12 seconds and now it's closer to 10. So that's a lot. So that means like we really need to think like pretty concretely about what that means for us, right? So when we think about what can we do to be clearer and how we interact with our communities, right? I encourage you, instead of going survey crazy, think about what are the implicit and explicit ways that we can learn from our donors, right? You know, what can we learn about an email that doesn't have a high open rate? What can we learn about that event invitation that didn't have a high RSVP, right? Trying to create more meaningful feedback loops in the work that we do on our development calendars will mean a lot. And so what I mean with that is, you know, what you've learned from an email solicitation hopefully carries over to maybe how you might want to think about an event differently, or what the next email solicitation is going to be like. Doing what you can to create small feedback loops when you're testing out the efficacy of a message. That's a great way to use actually volunteers and kind of more committed donors, just for them to test out the messaging that you do. Also a big thing with feedback loops, and when you do emails or when you do similar to how you think about website design, is that whenever you present a choice or an invitation to a supporter, make sure that you're giving them a next step to go to, right? So just like on a website page, you don't leave them with a dead end. We want to actually think about where are we going to ask them to go next. And when we think about what that next step is for them, it's really great just to have one choice if possible. And again, you'll learn if that was a strong next step by whether how many people take it. We do know that when you ask people at the bottom of an email to either donate or, you know, learn this or learn that, or you know, come check us out on social media. If you give folks too many choices, they either won't make a choice, or donation will probably be the third choice if it's one of three. So if you really want people to donate, just ask them to donate. And so that's important, right? That like we need to think about what the donor needs to learn, feel, and do with every communication that you have, right? That you're going to have a rational aim for what you're asking for, and then you're going to have an emotional aim for what you're asking for, and making sure that both of those things get communicated is going to be important. Okay, moving on. All right, community. It's important here when we think about building community that there really is strategic relationship management. The big ones here, right? Remember that board members are also donors and need to be cultivated. So ideally, we'd love to see that work happening between the head of the organization and the board chair, thinking not just about how those board members are clicking into their work and that they're engaged, but that conversation about giving and how they're also opening up their communities to the work of the organization is something that needs to be an ongoing conversation and part of board management. Don't forget that volunteers should be cultivated. We know that volunteers are more likely to give than any other type of, person that might be aware of your organization. So even though they're giving their time, do not feel bad about asking them for money as well. This is the third point. Committees should have non-board members. And so there's lots of ways to get people involved there. You can have committees and for all kinds of purposes, and make sure that like they're short-lived if they don't, that not every committee needs to live on in perpetuity. And for those committees that are actually connected to your board governance, please have some non-board members on there. That's really important for kind of raising that next level of leadership as terms expire on the board and you need to bring in fresh views, fresh perspectives. It's going to be really, really important. So, and then finally, like leaning into the power of your peers, asking others in the organization, asking friends and relatives to, all be a part of the work that we do. We should definitely mix up our communities more than we do. It's a big part of trying to make our organizations more equitable too. All right, and moving on, community events. So one of the things here is building opportunities to learn about supporters as possible, not just your VIPs. So think about the scale of your event. Galas can't just be like people walking in to grab a cocktail and sitting down to kind of a mediocre chicken dinner. We really need to think, and for listening to some nice speeches, really think about ways that you can use that time for ambassadors to go connect with folks, for maybe folks to do something experiential, right? We need to have leave behinds, right? Things that are that they leave with us. Hopefully they share some insight maybe about how they felt about the event, what inspires them about the work, why they showed up that night. Those kind of like wall messages that you can do with sticky notes. They can be really simple things that you can do, but asking people to share themselves that night at the event is a really powerful way to get them to reflect about what your organization means to them. Likewise, giving takeaways, even if they're really small things, is really great for them to remember your organization after that event is over. And finally, when we think about equity and making ourselves more accessible, if you're doing a traditional like ticketed event, having some kind of way to have a free ticket option to some part of the night is really important, right? We want everyone to feel included in the celebrations that we do. The other thing I'll just say really quickly about events is that I encourage you to think about small events too, bringing together a group of like 10 to 20 people to talk about the work that you do and hopefully like cue up the idea of what naturally comes to mind is kind of giving circles. That's really one of the big things that came out of the pandemic is that there's a rise in giving circle activity, informal collections of friends and neighbors and things coming together to do work. Traditionally, we see that in donation drives, which I know you all said that that's like a really important thing that you'd like to see happen. So there's ways to kind of cultivate this ourselves too, by kind of bringing folks together and letting them kind of be led to the idea of a giving circle. Could be really helpful in kind of melding your individual giving goals with your event goals. And those smaller events are also much more efficient and less expensive to run. Okay, last thing, peer-to-peer fundraising and renewable gifts. So this gets into some of the pain points some of you shared around people feel stressed out, there's inflation happening, people are nervous about like making these kind of commitments and responding to solicitations. So number one, thank folks that have brought other people into your donor base. That's important because those folks could come back to bat for you again and keep doing that work. So remember, so identify them if you don't know them, and then definitely become friends with them and make sure they feel recognized and thanked for what they're doing. The other big thing that we're seeing with organizations kind of making that individual giving work more sustainable is asking folks, instead of one donation where you're asking them to stretch up to $100 gift or up to a $250 gift, you could ask them to move it into a monthly giving donation, whereby you're moving them up that incremental size of the gift up a little bit, but they won't feel the kind of psychological pressure of making a big jump. And so, asking your $100 donor to move up to giving $14 a month, right? Like you've almost moved them up to a $150 donation. And that can be meaningful for you if you do it with a big group of folks. And then finally, those folks that have shown a commitment to you over the years, you can move them into multi-year gifts. That was one of the big things we learned with the pandemic, is that people will respond to that when you're clear about what good it does to know that they can be counted on, and that your mission can be better supported by having folks making maybe a 2-year commitment to the work that they do. So maybe that's when you can start moving your $500 givers up to 1,000, right? And having that kind of reliability in your donor base over time can be really meaningful. So I know I'm over time, and this is the last one. So thinking about relevancy, when we think about our email solicitations, try and think about them in terms of a series, a communication journey versus just a standalone solicitation, because that's a lot of work for just one email communication to do. So priming people up for the ask and then actually giving the ask are going to be different emails. Talked a little bit about doing smaller scale and different versions of Giving Tuesday campaigns, presenting calls, single calls to action in the emails that you do. And then finally, if you want to, be relevant and break through the noise a little bit, do a little reflection on like what your brand voice is and show some personality in what you do. The biggest ways that you can think about this in terms of that, think that 10-second window that we have for emails is test your subject lines. That's the most important thing that you can do, is having a really compelling subject line for your email. And then that first sentence that comes in after that subject line, Google will show us what that line is. Having it be something interesting that they really want to click on will improve your open rates. And when you improve your open rates, you will generally improve your click-through rate to your donation button. So those are the big ones. I'm sorry I was a little bit rushed, but it was so nice to be able to talk to you all and use some of our time together to be in, in group conversations. So I don't know, Melissa, if we have time for questions and answers, but we can do that. And here's our contact information. So
we definitely have up to 5 minutes for questions. And there are a couple in the chat.
Yeah.
One of them I
that's great.
selfishly put in too, because it's an intern. Love your input.
All right. Great. So I guess I see Jamie's question, right? Okay, so with the monthly giving, you lose more to credit card processing for small monthly gifts. Does it feel worth it? Is there a point that you would say should be the monthly donation? Okay, sure. So there's a couple ideas with this. I do think it feels worth it. Many donation processors now will actually have that extra option available for the donor to cover the 3% transaction fee, or maybe it's a little bit higher for you, but generally we're seeing transaction fees between, on the low end, I think 2.75. On the high end, I've seen as high as 4. But you can, if you please look to see if your donation processor can open that up for you, because many donors will respond to that and do that for you. In terms of minimum monthly donation, I've seen a report from another national organization that I don't think there's a minimum. I think you could go as I wouldn't solicit for something less than $10 a month, but that's just, there has to be a line somewhere, right? But in terms of a popular number that people will respond to, it seems to be, you have to be south of $25, and it seems that $19 for those like low level donors seems to be a magic number. There's some psychology around the number 25, I think. And when you do that hierarchy of choices, 19 will be one of the most popular giving amounts. So Okay, Nora, right. Yeah, that's a really good point. People's credit card numbers change. She noted that there's a chance to lose people there, but if you can kind of get in front of that. Sometimes you can let people, you can do an email, you can do a query in your thing about who's going to get run, you know, and what their expiration dates are. And so that you can get in front of it and asking the donor to update the information before it expires. So you can do a query for that, to do that. And then how do you nicely let a donor to update their credit card information? Yeah, you can just, I think you use it as another opportunity to say thank you. And then you ask them to do the updating. So, okay, other platforms besides PayPal. Gosh, there are a lot now. And I'd actually, I mean, there's Network for Good. That seems to be a really popular one for some smaller nonprofits because they offer a fair amount of website support as well. There's platforms too that can incorporate texting too, which is really great. But if other folks have ideas in the chat about if you're pleased with the platform that you use, okay, great. Give Butter or and maybe it's Give Better, is a great one. I've heard of that one too. So yeah, I encourage folks to do that. Oh, and yes, employee giving is also a really wonderful way to ask your donors if they are part of, if their corporation does employee giving matches. Okay. And I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay, Melissa, you had your question. We always debate one email with many topics, both program and fundraising, or many single topic emails, but we are fearful of unsubscribes. Thoughts? Sure. I don't think you have to be worried about unsubscribes anymore. You kind of have to insult someone at this point in order to get them to unsubscribe. So I think if somebody signed up to hear from you, I think they're more, it seems like user behavior for what we're seeing is that people are just more likely not to open the email. And it is hard to have a compelling open line when it's about like a newsletter format where it's like a bunch of things. So it can be a really, again, like wonderful way to think about, well, if we do single topic emails, trying to find out what are the topics that are people responding to, right? And like thinking about, so testing those out, is a great thing. We know that in terms of newsletter digest too, it's harder because people don't, if we only have 10 seconds to really show why we're relevant, having super long emails, because more is being done on mobile, they won't keep scrolling down to the bottom. So just if you are going to do more than one topic on an email, make sure the most important thing is going to be at the top.
And yeah, just to your point, thank you so much, Jessica. We're doing a financial literacy seminar, which I'll talk a little bit more about closing. But for the first email, and Deidre can correct me, but it was a little bit more generic about navigating household finances. But then Deidre had another email, changed the email topic for the next email that went out, and it was like, our money was keeping you up at night, and we got a really good open rate on that. So
wow.
Sometimes even the same topic, but changing the topic.
The context, right? Oh, that's awesome. That's a great lesson. And email frequency. So this is, this is another thing that's changed a lot in the pandemic. So I encourage you to test it out. What we know, if you're an advocacy nonprofit, that you're really trying to build community and build awareness about a certain thing that decision makers you need to reach, and bills that need to be passed, and petitions that need to be signed, that there is a higher tolerance for those kind of messages, right? When there is missions that are highly urgent. Seem to be able to email frequently. They could almost email daily, right? When I think about like your MoveOn.org kind of folks, right? That there's always a campaign that's in action. So email, I think you can email probably once or twice a month, depending on how active your mission is. I think about correlating your program activation and with your email frequency. So if that's a helpful guide, if you have something to share, you should share it, but I don't think you have to be worried about oversharing as much.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Looks like that was the last
Melissa, are you
question.
still in? Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, it looks like that was the last question in the
Okay.
chat. So anything else before we wrap up on your side?
No, I think we're here. You have my information here. That's my email, and I encourage you to please check us out at HV Consults. Again, it's a really fantastic community of folks that have been working in the Hudson Valley for a fair amount of time, and so we're here with you and eager to help you on all kinds of things. So please reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That was absolutely fantastic. Do you mind stop sharing, Jessica? And
Yeah, of
we want to give
course.
you a huge round of applause from everybody.
Oh,
So thank you so
thank
much.
you.
I know our team was taking vigorous notes and learning a lot. I see Jeannie's head nodding, and I know the development team was in the chat. I'm sure all of the rest of you were also learning tons of helpful tips and trying to figure out how to navigate this sort of, like you said, kind of in between weird time. So yeah, lots of people are commenting about all the notes that they're taking, and we're just so thrilled. That was just absolutely fantastic. And
Thanks. Well,
Hudson Valley.
it was such a pleasure to be here with you all. I really appreciate it, and I'm hoping we can just remember to be brave and have faith in what you do. You all are doing such inspiring work, and thank you for sharing some of your time with me today.
Thank you again, Jessica. That was absolutely fantastic. And I know lots of folks are going to be reaching out to you and Hudson Valley Consults, and you can't all ask Jessica to get Lady Gaga as your keynote at your next fundraiser. Okay. Thank you again. That was absolutely incredible. So next, we are going to be taking a 2-minute break, and then I will be doing the last portion of today's agenda, talking about our application mandatory meeting for applicants, talking about our updated funding priorities. So when you come back, please do put on your best background. It can be a virtual background, or maybe you just like to match with your background with your outfit or what have you, or maybe you have a really pretty painting or what have you. Rebecca's going to give out another prize for best background. So I'll see you back here at 12:05. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully y'all are getting your best backgrounds in place for our next contest. Ooh, I see the islands, I see a television. I see the European castle. See some great paintings. Nora, you're upside down in front of the Golden Gate somehow.
I don't know how to turn myself back, so it'll be part of my uniqueness.
I've noticed Paul just has a great background all day from Stonewood Farm.
Such great backgrounds. So.
Ooh, and look at Doris in the forest. I just saw that one. Got some just and Olga and then just cherry blossom trees. Patty's got a nice one too.
A lot of nice ones. I picked Cali. I like the tropical or the flowers. Very nice.
We all like to be, right?
Yes.
Very cool. Although I gotta say, Kelly's is so cool. I didn't realize she was in the television set, so I've never seen that one before. That's wild. Great job, Callie. We will get you the gift card after today. So thanks, Ray. So thank you everyone for participating. We love to do these contests, keep Zoom fun and interesting. So next time, you know, be ready. These are our two favorites. We have others, but these are our two favorites. So. All right, thanks everyone. So I am now going to go ahead and talk about United Way funding. So here we are. All right, you should be able to all see, yes? All right, great. And Nora, you're still upside down, so I don't know how to help. So hopefully you can see everything okay. All right. Thank you everyone so much for being here. Please do feel free to put your questions in the chat as you go through. And of course, I will allow you to unmute at the end, and I will take any other questions that you have. Each year we have an informational funding meeting. So you'll just find out about some information about applying to United Way's upcoming granting season. I know all of you did go ahead and submit your letters of intent, and you did receive those invitation letters for those of you that are new to United Way funding. Those of you that have been funded in the past 3 years for a program that you're looking to apply for did not have to submit an LOI. So I did just want to make sure that you are all aware of that. And if you do have any questions about the LOI, perhaps you're here and you didn't know about it and you didn't submit or something like that, which I'm sure is an inevitable question, I will bring all of that to our Community Impact Committee, and it'll be up to them if they will accept your application or not. So I do not have the authority right here, right now to say one way or the other. So you all know our mission. Together we fight for the health, education, and financial stability of every person in our community. And of course, we have a great team. Many of you have met some folks here today, and you've heard from Jeannie and heard from our development team, and of course our program staff are behind the scenes, making sure everything is going well this morning. I always do like to really think about what Cami was saying earlier when we talk about everything that's happened in the last 3 years. And it's really wild that we're coming up on the 3-year anniversary. And I know, we're in a very different space than we were in March of 2020. But, we still have 500 or 600 deaths a day here in the United States. We've lost over 1.1 million Americans. So I would just like to take a moment and just think of them. And thank all of you for what you've been doing to help all the families, households, children throughout this very challenging last 3 years. And hopefully we will be in a space where things continue to improve. So we've done a lot of strategic planning at our organization. We have a strategic planning board subcommittee that is very engaged and involved in our work. And a couple of times we wanted to make sure that we are still investing in the most critical priorities in our community. And after the pandemic, everything changed again. So again, we of course went ahead and did another community survey and find out from our donors and partners and volunteers to make sure that we were in fact still investing in those really critical priorities. We did of course learn that we are still in touch with all the most urgent needs, and we continue to be flexible in our strategy and make room for new and emerging needs, as again, this is a very uncertain time. And you know, my team often asks me, what are the biggest needs in our community? And you know, you can ask me one month and I'll give you one answer, and then you ask me the next month and it might be a different answer, right? It's just been a lot of needs converging at once throughout the last 3 years. And of course, we had a lot of need before the pandemic. And of course, this is all very involved and engaged with our board of directors, and the determination was made that the identified priorities are in alignment with community need and donor directives. So how we sort of look at our funding year, and it is a long process, and I know some of you, of course, have served as community grant reviewers, and if that's something you're interested in learning more about, please do send me an email after this, because I am still looking for a few more folks to participate. And if you are also applying for funding, no worries, I will make sure that you are not reviewing your own application or any of its competition. So do let me know. I know a lot of development folks do find it an interesting process to be on the other side of it, so to speak. So each year we release, we have a community conversation. We focus around food insecurity, and I know some of our food security partners are on today's meeting. We then had a letter of intent process and had our community impact committee evaluate the letter of intent submissions. It is very brief, as those of you that applied know. It is not to add more burden. The reason we do the letter of intent is really in terms of equity. So what we've heard from the past is some organizations, you know, would submit a full proposal, which do require a lot of staff time and a lot of resources. And if the proposal, you know, was not in alignment, and this is an organization that has 1 or 2, if that, you know, paid staff, that was taking a lot of resources that could be used to help folks directly in the community. So we wanted to have a letter of intent process so they could let us know their idea. And then our community impact committee was able to say, yes, that does align with what we're looking to do, or no, that's, you know, not a great fit. Maybe another foundation might be somebody else to reach out to. And then also in terms of our volunteers time too, we wanted them to really be focused on the proposals that had, you know, had a really great chance of being invested in. We release our RFPs after that, and you'll learn about the date in a couple of slides. Then we go into our grant review process. Like I said, if any of you are interested, we have community grant reviewers. They are community leaders. They are in business. They're in collegiate institutions. They're in nonprofits. They're in government. They're in faith-based institutions. We try to get a really diverse group of voices from many different sectors. And each grant reviewer looks at about 5 grants. We try to have at least 10 sets of eyes on each application. We then let our awardees know, you know, if they receive funding or not. And then we begin the year, and a fiscal year is July to June. So our funding priorities under health, we look to increase access to healthy food for families in our community, and the outcome is that families will experience greater food security. Under our veterans category, program staff and volunteers will increase access to affordable housing and legal services for veterans and their families. This leads to the outcome of increased accessibility to affordable housing and legal support options for veterans. Under financial stability, we look to improve access to resources to alleviate short-term financial crises in order to increase local families' economic position, resulting in an increase in financial assets for ALICE and low-income individuals. We have 2 priority areas under education. We look to increase opportunities for positive youth development and literacy services. The outcome being a youth will enroll in programs that develop positive behaviors and or read proficiently at grade level. We also look to develop opportunities for lifelong learning to increase skill-based development, and as a result, increase families' access to education and workforce training programs. So looking at our key dates, and I will make this available afterwards, we will be releasing a request for proposal on February 6th. You'll be able to go on our website, and we will be sending out a constant contact to all of you that day. You will have 6 weeks to then write your proposal, so they will be due back on March 17th. We do not allow extensions or exceptions. So please, 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 I can say 100 pleases right now. Don't wait till the last day. Don't wait till the last hour. I don't know why a lot of you like to live on the edge, right? So about half of our proposals usually do come in the last hour. I don't know, I'm too neurotic. I can't live on the edge like that. But if you go ahead and end up encountering internet issues or something like that happens, we don't have extensions. So please don't ask. Please just, even a few days before, right? So just making sure if there's an emergency, your proposal is in. And it kills us when we get those requests and when we get those proposals in late, because we're not the bad guy. We're partners with all of you, but we do have these policies in place. Our technical guidance PowerPoint is available online. We'll make sure that that is updated. And of course, any questions can go to CIinbox@uwdr.org. You all know Rebecca. Rebecca's wonderful, the best. Her and I work very closely together. And, if I can answer it, I will. If I can't answer it, I'll just let you know I can't answer this. So, and of course, she's also our technical genius and wizard. So if there's any, portal questions or anything like that, she'll be able to help you. So don't freak out. Don't worry. Rebecca's got this. We'll then let awardees know in June of 2023 and execute those contracts for July 1 for another 1-year time period. Like I said, we have a thorough, intensive community grant process with up to 200 grant reviewers who evaluate and score each of your proposals and then bring them up to our Community Impact Committee, who has a full day of going through all of the recommendations from the grants reviewers and then trying to distribute the available funding in most equitable manner. And then I present all of that 6-month process up to our board of directors for final approval, who are also very active and engaged in the process. Several of them participate in grants reviews, sit on our Community Impact Committee, and are just so proud of all the incredible work you all do. What we expect from our community partners and our funded partners is a successful observation of a program site visit. We have had virtual site visits. Right now we're hybrid, right? So some site visits may make sense to be more virtual if we're not able to, physically sit with clients. And it's a meeting between staff, and that can definitely be done effectively on Zoom. But if it's an opportunity for us to, for example, see youth somewhere, if there is an opportunity for us to go in person, we're at that point where we can do that. So that's where we are right now. And again, hopefully that's where we'll be, in the fall, because they're calling the new variant the Kraken, which I guess the scientists are joking now. I don't know. We do expect a timely completion of mid-year and end-of-year reports. It's only 2 reports, and we try to keep them as bare bones and simple as possible. We really just want the impact. How many folks you're serving? Are you meeting the outcomes you anticipated? And give us a couple success stories so that we can let our donors and community members know about the incredible work that we're all doing together. Please do make sure your United Way logo is on your website and any program materials that you're printing. And if you need any help with that, let us know. Again, we're not the bad guy, we're here to help. And make sure your 211 and your volunteer portal are updated. And if you have any questions about that, please let us know as well. I know sometimes making sure your 211 is updated is like the last thing on your list, but it's really important. We get 20,000 calls in our area to 211. If they're looking for a program and you're the one that could be it, we want them to be able to be directed to the correct place. So please, you just call 211, say you're an agency, and they will get you updated. Or if you want to email someone directly, just reach out to me and I'll get you connected. And we do ask y'all to participate in our, in our United Way events. we have gone back to a lot of our in-person fundraisers, and we have some exciting ones coming up. And at the end, I'll let Jeannie talk a little bit about that. But we do love for our partners to be there, so you can meet with our donors, our supporters, and just, you know, again, it's a partnership. We're all doing this work together, and we're really so proud too to showcase your amazing work. We do have volunteers through our volunteer portal, and Rebecca, if you can drop that link in the chat box, that would be great, because we have updated it. And if you have questions about that, you can certainly reach out to Rebecca. And of course, we have these fabulous days. I know you all learned a lot from Cami and Jessica, and you're going to give me some great testimonials in your survey. So thank you in advance. We do offer these a couple of times a year, as well as our community conversations. And we have our Gift in Kind program and our community conversations. And we had some fabulous folks at our last community conversation on food insecurity. So we really are trying to always make sure we're being responsive to the most emerging and critical needs in our community. And of course, attending all of these phenomenal fundraisers that Gina is going to talk about at the end. Through Days of Caring, we have 5 that we celebrate a year. So right now we're through our MLK Day Equity Challenge. And if one of my team members could post that in the chat, that link, I know it's been going throughout the day, but if they could post it again, that would be great. Like I said earlier, we're on day 7, but it's not too late. You can get access to all of the previous day's recordings, links, articles, videos, and also the next 14. Diversity, equity, inclusion is super important, obviously, to all of the work that we all do in the community. And so that we hope that you will all participate in our equity challenges. We do all the work for you, so it's a great way for you to go ahead and participate in this learning and share this with your organization. And this helps increase your equitable practices and capacity. We also have our National Volunteer Week, our Day of Action, 9/11 Days of Service, Make a Difference Day. I know many of you have worked with Caitlin, and so she'll be getting in touch with you to start planning some of our spring projects. Thank you.
Melissa, it's Tracy from the Food Bank. Can I just ask, are there dates, like is the Make a Difference Day a national thing?
So that's usually October 20th.
October 20th. And how about the Day of Action?
Yep, that's the United Way thing. That's the solstice, so June 21st. So around that. And then National Volunteer Week is in April, usually the 3rd week of April.
Yeah.
Great question, Tracy.
Thanks.
So I'm sure many of you have been to our Days of Sharing, or at least participated in one of our drives of our basement. You know, it's a fantastic program. We've pretty much tripled it to where it's begun, and Rebecca does an excellent job cultivating so many great relationships with our partners who donate our goods, as well as to our community partners that then receive those items. We also the last couple of summers have given out over 100,000 diapers and tons and tons of school supplies. So we're always trying to be really responsive to community need. We have our sort of larger scale Days of Sharing you can certainly sign up for, and then we can always help as needed. I know Rebecca has appointments throughout the week, so if you are interested and maybe something you didn't know about, do reach out to Rebecca, and Rebecca, you can just throw your information again in the chat box. We have lots of wonderful items that are all new in our basement to help families, survivors, children, anyone that may be in need. We have a professional development like today, and these are some of our past topics: social media, human resources, grant writing, volunteer management, communication, strategic planning, outcomes measurement, disaster planning, fundraising, community collaboration, social determinants of health, anti-racism, just for impact of COVID, DEI, and partnerships. So as you all can tell, we're trying to really bring you the most important and engaging, helpful professional development training for your cost. And we had some fabulous presenters today. Cami and Jessica just absolutely blew me away. So I hope you all keep coming to these. And for our partners, our funded partners are able to receive a discount at Mount St. Mary College. So if that's something that's new to you in the adult programs, do reach out. And our volunteers are able to participate and receive a discount at Marist College. So if that's new to you, let me know. And if you have wonderful volunteers that are going through your organization, as long as you are able to partner with us and have them go through opportunities through our volunteer portal, they can be eligible for that discount. So definitely feel free to ask me more offline. And I did mention our 21-day equity challenge. Again, just want to mention diversity, equity, inclusion work is really important to our organization, and we will start putting together our Juneteenth Racial Equity Challenge. And of course, Alice, we like to shine a spotlight on Alice, our asset limited income constrained employed folks. There's, you know, unfortunately, and I know Cami mentioned a statistic earlier, right, that women are 2/3 of minimum wage earners, for example. So, you know, we know that it's really challenging, but 45% of folks in New York State aren't able to balance their budget and are always, you know, a paycheck away from financial collapse. You know, 40% of households nationally don't have more than $300 in the bank to weather a sort of emergency. And of course, as if with the housing shortage, right, it's yeah, I mean, you all do this work. I could talk about this all day with you. But you please do visit our ALICE report. It's really interesting data. Obviously very depressing, but it is really helpful to know, and it really does segment it out to single female head of household, BIPOC families, what have you, can be really helpful in your grant writing too. So just please do utilize this resource. We invest in it with a number of United Ways, and we do this for the benefit of all of you. We do have our community conversations. Like I said, each year we pick a different topic depending on what the community needs are. So over the last number, we've looked at veterans' needs, early learning, the opioid epidemic, which of course, you know, unfortunately has really resurged during the pandemic, looking at the needs of ALICE, resiliency, housing barriers, which again, you know, I don't have to preach to the choir, food insecurity, and of course, learning loss and youth mental health, which is another crisis. So there's, like I said, if you ask me what the biggest needs in the community are 1 month, I might give you a different answer the next month. So please do participate in our community conversations. We want to hear from all of you. 211, I would take a poll to find out if anyone doesn't know about it, but that would make me too sad if anyone doesn't know about it. So please, 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 please remember 211, burning building 911, burning question 211. It's available 24/7. There's also text service. So if any of your clients are in need, this is the first referral place you can call them. It's available 24/7 in over 200 languages. And we recently partnered with Dutchess County government and have worked on an eviction prevention program that has impacted almost 500 Dutchess County families. Some new initiatives, right? So we thought, well, we're not doing enough. Let's do some more, right? So we have our nutrition outreach and education program, and hopefully you all got to meet Kendra and Isabella. They're fantastic. And if you can both put your contacts again in the chat, that would be great. So if you're looking to get any of your folks and participants signed up for SNAP benefits, they can assist. They're fantastic. We also have a language lines. We have bilingual service. They can meet folks in the community, at our office, you know, so we are being extremely accessible in this program, really trying to get out there. And if you have opportunities that they can come and table at or meet your participants, they are really enthusiastic and wonderful. We've been doing a lot of public health messaging around the triple-demic and getting people to just go back to their primary care provider. You know, we have learned anecdotally that a lot of folks haven't been to their primary care provider since the pandemic. People just really got out of the habit, or maybe they just, you know, haven't gone to get their colonoscopy or, you know, their breast cancer screening or what have you. So we're really trying to get people to go back to their doctor, because obviously the sooner you catch something, the easier it is to treat. So we have been doing a lot of bilingual messaging through our social media, through radio, through advertisements, digital ads. Hopefully you've seen some of our billboards. So that has been a great partnership with New York State that we've been really focused on. And prior to that, we did a huge campaign as well, a social messaging campaign around people to get their flu and their COVID vaccine. So we're very, very huge about public health. We also have lift codes available. So if any of your folks are in need of transportation to get to the doctor or the grocery store, get vaccinated, get to a class, what have you, they can receive a one-time round trip lift code in Poughkeepsie, Newburgh area. So if you have questions, just shoot me an email. And like I mentioned, we've helped almost 500 households with eviction prevention services through 2-on-1 in Dutchess County government. So that's been an excellent partnership. And then we have Ray here, our new food security Vista, who's been working closely with the food bank on increasing food accessibility. So those are some of our newest programs I wanted to share with you all while I had you. Through all of the work that we do, this is a snapshot of the work of collaboration. We've helped almost 132,000 people last year, through our prescription discount cards, the funded programs that we work with, our 2-on-1 helpline, or cash, which I didn't even mention, Liz and Linda, please don't kill me. Cash is amazing. It is our free tax preparation service that we work with, creating assets, saving hope. Linda Eddy does an absolutely fantastic job, and Dave Weaving coordinating this really wonderful project, which I know has 20 different partners. And they are accepting appointments now, which can be made through 2-on-1. And each year they're helping over 4,000 different households, a lot of seniors, a lot of ALICE, low income, moderate income households, and a lot of transformational change. They do great surveys at the end and, find out that a lot of folks who are able to really make a transformational change, maybe purchase a washer dryer, maybe repair a vehicle, maybe pay down credit card debt, things that really make a huge difference in our lives. So I think otherwise I covered everything here that is in our impact report. There's my contact information. Feel free to take a picture of it, or I will also put it in the chat box as well, and hopefully I'll have it. Probably I'll get 10 emails from me a day. So I'm going to stop sharing and allow you all to put questions in the chat box or unmute yourself. Thank you. And before I do that, Jeannie, you want to talk about the fundraising side of everything?
Of course, of course. Thank you. This was a terrific day, in my opinion, and I always learn something new. I was writing notes and I was taking pictures with my phone and stuff. But so we do have our celebration of service coming up. It is going to be May 17th at 5:30 at the Grandview, and we are going to be honoring Millbrook Wineries. We promise you it'll be fun, and we're also giving a discount to nonprofit employees. So we hope to see you there. I mean, we love representation from the nonprofit community. And then also at that, and Susan Marchuka, who is on, you can call her with any questions or anything. And then also at that event, we're going to be crowning our Talent United finalists. And Lindsay Miller, I know she's on here. I saw her. Oh, there she is. So we will be taking, registrations for people to be in part of our Talent United, which is so much fun. People submit a video of whatever their talent is, and then we narrow it down to the finalists, and then they're voted on, and they get to, if they can, perform at the event, which is very exciting. So we will be having that, and you'll hear more about it. And it's not confirmed yet, but we're hopeful that our Pull the Plane event will be Saturday, June 10th at Stewart Airport. And you'll be hearing a lot more about that. We just got to confirm that we've got our plane. So I think that's it for now on the fundraising. Liz is on. I don't know if she wants to add anything, or Lindsay or Susan.
No, if anyone needs more information, Susan, if you can put your contact information in the chat box, and Lindsay as well for Talent United, if anyone wants any information, but all the information is going to be up on our website.
Currently working on getting all the information together for Talent United, but I did put the link for Celebration of Service. That is live. So if you want to check that out, it's there.
Thank you so much. Thanks, fundraising team. So I do have a couple questions about some of our programs. One was about Lyft. So I know, Michelle, you mentioned it is only in Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, which is true. However, if it's on the outskirts, for example, Wappingers to Poughkeepsie, it's got to be under 25 each way. So we've been able to get as far as Pleasant Valley, but we can't really get much farther than the Dutchess side. And we've been able
I'm
to get to
sorry, Melissa, $25 or 25 miles?
dollars.
Dollars, okay. So it has to be under $25 each way.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other side, for example, we can get Newburgh to New Windsor, but not much farther than that. So we have a little bit of flexibility with that, but unfortunately, because there's been a driver shortage during the pandemic, we have to really limit it to those vicinities where there are the most drivers. And I will have some codes available in the next couple of weeks for folks that are asking. And I know I saw Deidre put some collaterals and Val put some collaterals around cash, which is great because I know there were some questions about that. I'm just looking through if there's anything I missed. Does anyone want to come off mute? Did anyone have any questions about funding or just anything else? We're all here to help. So.
If you can reiterate what day granting opens?
February 6th. Great question.
Okay, and it ends March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day. And we really don't want you to wait till St. Patrick's Day. We want
Jane's ready though. See her background?
What? Who's?
Like Jane's ready for St. Patty's Day background, right?
Yeah.
Well, really, there are 4-H clovers. But we don't mind sharing it with St. Paddy.
Very cute. Yeah, don't wait till the last day, guys, because you just never know what's going to happen. Your, system could go down or whatever. And we don't want the fact that you're not getting funding because you couldn't get in. And that's why we do this meeting. We want to give you as much time as possible. We want to offer assistance, but we also want to tell you we don't take late people. It's kind of like we have to have like a cutoff period. So, and that's been decided by the committee. So, yeah, please, any questions before then? And yeah, lift codes are with email, I'm sorry, Melissa, I think someone answered that when I saw that.
I need clarification on the grant application. Did you say an LOI should have been in and folks were invited? Because on the website, there's a February 6th community grant opening.
Yeah, great question, Liz. So there was an LOI in the fall, and we did invite those that were successful in their LOI to apply for a full funding application. For those that have had their programs funded in the last 3 years, they did not need to submit an LOI. They're able to just go ahead and apply to our full funding. If somebody for some reason did not put in an LOI but would like to still apply, it'll be up to our community impact committee if they'll accept that application or not.
So you just apply no LOI. Once
at this point, the LOI is closed. Thank you. Rachel Wilson.
Yeah, just a couple quick things representing the Youth Bureau end of things for anybody working with youth and families, because we partner a lot. I encourage anybody who has questions or isn't as used to doing United Way grants to also join in the opportunity when you can. Melissa last year had invited us to be a part of the panel or the discussion if you have questions that are generic, that, what goes on in the mind of a grant reviewer? What are we thinking when we look at grants? And that could be helpful to you. Also wanted to just reiterate the importance of the volunteer portal and 211. From the United Way perspective, we really use that United Way portal. We have young people, teens, and college students looking for volunteer opportunities. And if you're not in that portal, we have a much harder time to connect these interested folks to you. So take the time to do it. If you need a little more guidance with it, if you're Orange County, reach out to us. We've helped some of the youth serving organizations and others, if you're a veterans group or animal group, because our young people are looking for a variety of volunteer opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad you brought that up. And yes, Rachel is going to have another session, another office hours session. Her and I are confirming the date, which I just added to my list of to-dos, Rachel. So thank you so much. And the Youth Bureau is such a tremendous partner. We're so appreciative. And I steal from Rachel and, you know, ideas because she's brilliant. And we do coordinate a lot of our positive youth development strategy as well. So thrilled you're on here, Rachel, and thank you again. A lot of her team during the pandemic did a lot help with our volunteer portal and getting like 100 different opportunities up there for Orange County, and a lot of the more rural Orange County areas that we hadn't had a lot of opportunities up previously. So that was phenomenal. So yeah, keep posting them, Rachel. They're wonderful, and really appreciate the help of your team. So thanks. Sabrina Sargent, you're next.
Yes. Hi, Melissa. So I missed the LOL. And I heard you say that you wouldn't be able to make that decision. So what do I need to do in order to find out?
Yep. So you can go ahead and submit a full application, and then it will be up to our community impact committee if they will put resources into those.
Okay. So at this point, it's too late you said it was closed for the LOL.
The LOI is closed, correct.
And I'm sorry, as far as volunteering for the review process.
Yeah,
how do I get onto that?
Love to have you. So just shoot me an email after today, and I will send you all the information and your conflict of interest form and what have you. And again, if any of you are invited that are interested, Sabrina, I really look forward to working with you. And again, a lot of folks have said that are grant writers on the funding side or the program side. I've just said it's very helpful for me to be on the other side because, you know, we put in so many grants that it's just really good professional development.
Okay.
So
yep, thank you.
Great. Jane, you're next.
I would love some training in how to accurately write your budget. I have two problems. First of all, the CCDC operational budget is relatively huge, but the program budget, which is a standalone budget, is relatively small. And B, our financial year doesn't align with the grant year. And it's really hard separating all that out and making sense of it on the budget form. So if there was any training available to do that more accurately, I guess, and be sure we're giving you what you want, I'd really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Jane. I'm happy to have a phone call with you, you know, after this and talk more through that. And Rebecca and I will take a look at our budget form and just see if there's any way to streamline it. And I do want to say you're not alone. I mean, you know, for example, our Catholic Charities organizations, right, they may have a larger budget as an organization, but then the crisis funding that we're providing is, you know, obviously a very small portion of their budget. So a lot of organizations are in a similar boat.
Thank you.
Danny Saratella.
Hi, thank you. I missed it. Did you say if an organization was funded in the last 3 years, we don't need an LOI, or if we have applied in the last 3 years?
If you've received funding for a program in the last 3 years, and I know Bintu, you also asked that. So if your program has been funded by United Way in the last 3 years, then you did not have to put in an LOI.
Thank you.
You have me for 18 more minutes, so if you got more questions, feel free to unmute, raise your hand, or put them in the chat.
It looks like Sabrina Sargent has a question, Melissa.
I think her hand may still be up from last time.
Okay.
Did you have
Yes,
another
I'm
question,
sorry.
Sabrina?
Nope, I'll take it down.
No worries. I do the same thing. Jackie?
Hi, Melissa. I just had a quick question in regards to, you know, if you have an organization that has never been funded before, you know, what would be key things that you're going to, or the committees is going to be looking for to, you know, I know that it has to be one of the items that's listed as far as like a focal point, but, you know, within that, what should we be focusing on as, clear objectives for what would be a high priority for United Way?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a lot of things, and I just want to say publicly before I answer this that I do not make these decisions. I can't guarantee funding. I just convene it. But what I can say is that from our grant reviewers, they're always looking for, clear proposals, programs that have impact. They look at partnerships. They look at geographical diversity. They look at how many other programs are funded in the same category. They look at how much funding we have available, if it's a more competitive year or not. Does it relate, to the pandemic? Does it relate to emerging needs? Well, obviously, like you said, it has to follow our priorities and our request for proposal documents. Is it an established program, or is there diversity of funding sources? I don't know. Jeannie, you want to add in any others?
Yeah, so we definitely do look at the budget. So Jane, that was a really good question. Especially, simple math, just make sure you guys are looking over it, I would say, because when there's errors on the budget, we kind of go, so, and then they come back to you guys and want to ask for more information and everything. So I would just, when we submit one, we always try to have, a couple of sets of eyes, especially on budgets, and, just make it as clear as possible. You don't have to use technical language and everything. Just make it as clear as possible so that the reader can understand exactly what your program is. So those would be my suggestions.
That's good. And I would also agree with you, and also add that, like you said, being very succinct. Don't feel like you need to write, if you have 1,500 characters, don't feel like you need to write one long sentence that's all those characters. Bullets are great. What's easy to read, so just think about, if you're a reviewer, what is going to come across.
Okay, thank you.
A great question, Jackie. Big question, but a great question. Other folks? All right, I'm going to go into closing because I know I'm going to start losing people otherwise, but I will stay on if anyone wants to talk to me privately or what have you. So I just wanted to again thank our phenomenal presenters. Can we please give them another round of applause? They are wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessica and Cami. And I also want to remind you all to take our survey. I also do hope to see you and your participants on February 2nd at our next financial literacy workshop around navigating household finances and budgets. Deidre, if you want to drop in that link, or one of my team, just one more time. We do have some more spaces available, and we'd really love for you all to get this information. And if you don't think it applies to you, it definitely applies to folks you work with and could be really helpful information for you to have. So again, please do your survey, please. That's how we get funding, so it's really important. And I just really appreciate all you do every day for the folks in our community. You're all amazing. Like I said, it's always fun to spend the day with my 100 friends. So thank you again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll stick around.
Thank you so much,
Melissa. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Melissa.
Hi there.
I have a question for you. I think I may have misunderstood something. If we were funded through the phase 30, that's
totally different pot of money.
Okay, so then I should have done a letter of intent.
If you were looking for community fund money, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I totally misunderstood the email when I got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a
Thank you,
question.
Melissa.
Yeah.
Do you offer capacity building grants?
We do not. Dyson does have some of that funding, so they're a good place to reach out to. Good question.
Well,
Hi,
thank you.
Melissa.
It's really
So
informative.
Sorry.
Are we still waiting to hear back for this funding?
Received a letter
or
about
has-
LOI. Are you asking about?
No, I know we had to do a letter of intent before
Yes.
by a
so
certain date. Are we still waiting to hear back from that, or is this something totally different?
Yeah, so that was the first step, and we did send out those letters. If you didn't get it for some reason, Rebecca can chat with you offline about that, and resend it. But this is for then the full proposal that's after the LOI. Which organization are you from, Felicia?
Pathstone Corporation. So it may have gone to Patricia, but I'll follow up with Rebecca.
Okay, thank you.
Because I did it, but she's the main person for the organization. So I'll follow up with Rebecca. I'll shoot her an email.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, I work
Thank
closely
you.
with Patricia on the EFSP funding. So thanks so much.
Yes.
Melissa, this is Fern Lux from Chancellor Elementary. We're on snow day today, but is there anything like for a mini grant, or do we fill out the whole thing even if we're just asking for what in your world is a comparatively small amount?
Yeah, sometimes we do have funding available for mini grants. We don't right now. So it would be the full application at this point. If something changes, I can definitely let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good question. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. It seems like most people have